Stick with me. You and I are about to see if this guy is actually the legend everyone claims. He is the famous High Commander 𝒂𝒅𝒏𝒕, the Academy's greatest golden prodigy. Everyone is desperate to stay in his favor, and the flattery never stops. Honestly, he is absolutely loving it. Even Lady Beatrice, the Academy's top healer and high-ranking noble, is practically swooning just being near him. She wants to spar with him to get closer, but he is just acting cool, claiming he is too busy. That makes her snap, shouting that he should help her win because she is charming and funny. And needs to reach captain rank, but he just grins, asking why such a skilled knight is acting so clingy. Does she just want to carry from a real pro? He walks off while his fans wish they were her. Later, he is bored in class, and he suddenly stands up with a total lie of an excuse to leave. He asks for a healer, but instead, he sneaks off to practice for the grand tournament on the training relics. Suddenly, he spots someone else, a dark-haired kid already there. They agree to keep each other's secret and not snitch. When the noble boy sees Julian using the same combat relic, he gets a devious idea. Even with a rusty training sword, he challenges the new kid to a duel, seeing the boy's basic gear. Now watch this closely, because everything we thought we knew is about to change. But it is actually 𝒂𝒅𝒏𝒕 who lost 10 times. He got totally wrecked and cannot understand how a rookie won so easily. He is a commander. This isn't just some random peasant. He checks the records and uncovers the shocking truth. This quiet kid is actually mythic rank, the highest tier. Worst of all, he barely trains and has terrible magic lag. And of course, that is our main character. Unfortunately for Julian, the noble boy is now completely obsessed with him. Julian tries to sneak home, but 𝒂𝒅𝒏𝒕 is waiting. After some serious pestering, Julian finally gives in to the duel. They head to a secret training hall, where Julian finally uses top-tier equipment, when suddenly a gorgeous girl appears. From our hero's face, it is clear he wants her attention, but she is more interested in 𝒂𝒂𝒅𝒏𝒕 since she thinks he is the stronger knight for now. Even talking trash about Julian's low rank, 𝒂𝒂𝒅𝒏𝒕 tells her to just watch. Beatrice is a captain rank healer. 𝒂𝒂𝒅𝒏𝒕 is a high commander warrior, while our hero looks like a complete amateur. The battle begins. It is the League of Heroes. Our boy is just standing there, stunned by the incredible magical visuals of the arena. It is a fast-paced skirmish. 𝒂𝒂𝒅𝒏𝒕 lunges forward, lands a massive strike, and secures the first blood. Enemies swarm Beatrice to take out the healer, and it is Julian's time to shine. But he is fighting like a novice. That is because the magic controls on this high-end gear are all different. Once he figures it out, he locks in. But we do not get to see the fight, yet because the scene shifts to the next day in class. While Julian talks to 𝒂𝒂𝒅𝒏𝒕 about old allies, a girl sees him and freezes. She even gets hiccups from the shock. I bet we are both thinking the same thing. She is definitely his secret former partner. Back home, 𝒂𝒂𝒅𝒏𝒕 invites him to a tournament to win gold for a better relic. Meanwhile, lower-tier knights feel discouraged. That is why the lords organizing the event realized their plan was actually genius. With the world's greatest warriors signing up, this could be the biggest hit in history. Everyone was talking about a bracket full of legends, but Julian and 𝒂𝒂𝒅𝒏𝒕 were in trouble because Julian was only platinum. This whole competition was set up by the Herald, 𝒂𝒏𝒕 9000. The main goal was to lure our hero in. This was the first official kingdom-wide tournament in these lands. Julian was not feeling very confident, but the grand prize was 1,000 gold coins for the winning squad. Divided up, it is 200 each, which is plenty for Julian to upgrade his old, broken equipment. That is the winner's take, meaning they have to win. To 𝒂𝒂𝒅𝒏𝒕, Julian even doubting their victory is a total insult. He boldly claims that Julian was only held back by bad gear, and this time, they will dominate. With that boost of confidence, Julian is finally fired up and ready to give it his all. So the plan is simple. The kid needs to start grinding through the arena rankings to reach captain. So let's see if he can pull it off. Trust me, you won't want to miss what happens next. All right, you and I are about to dive into a story about a guy facing the ultimate nightmare, the ranked ladder. Back at Sebastian's estate, while checking his device, he saw a message from Julia inviting him to the theater this Saturday. But the boy tossed his device aside, tired of her constant pestering. Still, he wondered if Dorian had actually managed to hit that top rank yet. Sebastian was dying to know how many victories the hero had secured, convinced he had at least reached the rank of master by now. But right now, the lowly platinum emblem was shown to the blonde, and the poor guy felt absolutely mortified. While shaking with the fear of getting roasted, Dorian heard Sebastian shout in shock. Later that day, our hero was looking pretty pathetic. Sebastian tried to cheer him up, saying ranked matches were just brutal like that, and they could still level up before the weekend. He claimed it was strange, because a talent like Dorian should be able to rank up without even breaking a sweat. But then he found out the boy had 5 wins and 5 losses. At that moment, Sebastian couldn't even look his friend in the eye. Instead of feeling bummed out about losing his confidence, Dorian decided to grind every single day until he nailed it, hoping not to let Sebastian down. Now pay attention, because after a long night of epic gaming, the two friends were hit with an even bigger surprise the next morning. After playing a massive amount of matches, the main character actually got demoted all the way down to gold rank. While Julia was laughing her head off at the news, Sebastian was desperately trying to figure out what went wrong. The reality was they only had 4 days until registration closed. If this kept up, they wouldn't even get in, so they both felt totally defeated. In general, players from the Eastern Kingdoms are usually better than most, which raises the overall skill level of the entire server. But in these combat games, it is a whole different ball game since the Western warriors really tend to stand out. Because of that, Sebastian could not wrap his head around why the main character was struggling against such inexperienced players. He could not help but think the boy might be a fraud, but he shook that thought off, just trying to figure out the truth. Suddenly, out of nowhere, the boy apologized. Sebastian had said he was a solid player, but now Dorian wasn't so sure. He felt like dreaming big was his only real talent. Him putting himself down like that really did not sit right with the blonde noble. So he shot back that he already knew how good the hero was, since they had fought together in the past. That is why he called Dorian to hit up the gaming hall after class to see the issue firsthand. There, the boy prepared for battle. You and I probably saw this coming. Sebastian told him to chill, saying he needed to test the machine and adapt to it first. With a quick warm-up, he spent 10 minutes aiming at moving targets and adapting his speed to the new gear. Sebastian figured he just needed a bit of practice. Finally, Dorian said he was ready in both his skills and his equipment. Then, the two of them got hyped up and went to test the boy in a brand new match. Sebastian, watching from a distance, knew Dorian did not belong in gold rank. Being there was the only way to find the flaw. Anyway, just like before, even while giving it his absolute all, the hero faced another brutal defeat. Sebastian was more worried than he was. In fact, the boy was scared because he finally understood why he kept losing. Even with better gear, he needed to change his strategy. And the first issue was the game's voice chat. Surprisingly, Dorian did not even know that was a feature he could use. Then the blonde realized it would be better to show him through a replay, which he also had to explain since the boy was clueless. Finally, starting the replay, it became clear that he was being polite and greeted the team when the game kicked off. But there was the first mistake, which did not make sense to the boy since he had only said a simple hello. Dorian asked if he was not allowed to be polite, but he misunderstood because the issue was not about avoiding trolls. The main goal of the game is to win, but people play in all sorts of strange ways that make no sense. Some are totally focused on winning like they are, and others could not care less about the actual score of the match. There are those who just want to explore the scenery like they are on a hike, and those who enjoy buying fancy clothes. But the worst group the hero should steer clear of are the trolls who just love messing with people for no reason. He was losing because of the trolls wrecking his matches. Sebastian pulls the protagonist in to watch the footage very closely. First up is the snack troll, who runs away to grab some food right when the battle begins to unfold. Next to him is the pessimistic troll, who is convinced they are going to lose before the match even starts. And then the musical troll, who blasts tunes on the mic. One is rambling about food, while another is just whining. And the last dude, he only moves his character every minute just to dodge getting kicked out for being away. So, when the hero tries to chat with just 20 seconds left, he sees everyone pick the damage-focused class. Trust me, you and I can see the disaster coming. He tried to play support, but Sebastian knew they were already doomed. Stick with me, this knight is charging in recklessly. He gets crushed and starts blaming the shield bearers. Meanwhile, the lazy squire is eating while others just watch from the sidelines. Nearby, the jesters are trying to time their songs to the chaos. To win, you need vanguard, shields, and heavy hitters. That perfect balance is how warriors secure glory, but they have to fight with everything they have. Looking at elite versus novice squires, the skill gap is insane. So the boy tells Arthur he will never improve without stepping up. That is why Dorian asks how he will handle it when the other nobles start hurling insults. But Silas plans to ignore them, leaving Dorian confused. Silas points out that Arthur still dominates even when playing the protector. Back in the Western Kingdom, he could not talk to anyone because he did not know the local tongue. Silas asks how he survived, which brings back old memories. Turns out, Arthur just used the few foreign words he knew. And that is the secret. Tune out everything except the battle itself. Just fulfill your sacred duty without worrying about what others think. Silas asks if he truly wants to win the crown, and Arthur knows he does deep down. Now watch this. Give him a real sword, and he would flip the whole battle on its head. He finally realizes that after all those months training in the mud, he was the deadliest warrior there. Arthur was not just being arrogant, it was the truth. When he returned to the field, he saw the same 4 failures. The loudmouth noble immediately started whining about seeing the pathetic shield bearer again. But this time, Arthur was the vanguard, which made him furious. Instead of enduring the insults, Dorian tells his partner to shut up and pick a different weapon. Even the hungry squire finally agreed to choose a better role. In the end, they did not even have to lift a finger because Dorian slaughtered the enemies alone, carrying the whole team. The next day at the academy, Dorian arrives with news that he has reached the rank of Master Knight. Sarah is beaming with pride, saying she expected nothing less. Now the whole squad is fired up to sign for the grand tournament. Elsewhere, a stressed woman is cleaning up while complaining about being treated like a common servant girl. She is entering the trials, but training is impossible in all this chaotic mess. With 53,000 spectators watching, Harold Swyn announces that sign-ups for the King's Cup are officially closed. You and I both know the hype is real here. Harold Swyn warns the crowd not to panic, but legendary champions have joined. The commanders of these knights just formed a new squad, and 3 elite warriors are already in. The crowd is roaring for the coming bloodbath, but Swyn insists on honor, choosing the remaining teams by random drawing. To keep it fair, he spins a wheel based on merit. Eventually, 2 legendary pros are paired with some famous lords. Many claim the draw was rigged, since there are not that many true champions in the realm. And the identities of the warriors are kept secret until the morning of the duel. When asked why he is not fighting, Harold Swyn admits he is just a lowly iron rank here to give commentary. Next day, rumors of the tournament spread through the castle halls like a forest fire. Dorian thinks victory is a total cakewalk if Silas joins them. Julian, watching from the distance, believes they will be a legendary pair. She walks over and asks why they are always inseparable. But when Silas ignores her to keep talking to Arthur, Julian shoots Dorian a look that could kill. Eventually, she storms off, unwilling to waste more time, though the blonde knight does not even notice. People still wonder why Swyn is Harold when he is not even a gold knight. Back in the empty hall, Dorian apologizes for the pressure. He feels like every eye in the academy is on him, and Silas says it is because of the trials. But Dorian remembers that no one actually knows they are a duo yet. Silas admits he is feeling the pressure too, knowing legends are competing, but they earned their place on the leaderboard fairly. Arthur worries about failing during the big event, but the blonde knight will not hear any of it. Especially since their squad had heavy hitters like the legendary Sir James joining Dorian on the battlefield. Arthur learns Sir James is a living legend in multiple royal leagues. Dorian feels a wave of relief having such a seasoned veteran, so Silas tells him to relax. With 2 champions in the match, it meant Baron Mordred would likely be on the opposing side. This man was a rival to Sir James and was the highest-rated knight in the kingdom. He is so skilled that Dorian might not even stand a chance, but Silas could not tell him that. So what do you and I think? Can this quiet knight survive the lion's den? All right, you and I are diving into a world of knights where Arthur's been observing Daniel for months. Daniel always fades into the background, and Arthur still can't wrap his head around why a squire would be so incredibly introverted. That lack of confidence keeps him stuck in the shadows. Later, Julian spots someone while practicing her swordsmanship. Luckily for her, the only empty training mats in the grand hall are right next to her. It's Arthur. The blonde knight has no choice but to join her. Of course, Julian is thrilled to have him alone. But just as she moves in, Daniel returns from the barracks and ruins the moment. Julian shoots a murderous glare at the poor guy for the interruption. Julian screams that Arthur is a fool for ignoring her while training with Daniel every single day. Arthur tries to find an excuse without revealing the secret details of the upcoming nightly tournament. Not caring if he sounds harsh, he tells Julian she should find another sparring partner since she's being so clingy. She couldn't dream of picking someone else for her own reasons, but Julian refused to beg, leaving with a curse on his future matches as she stormed out. Even now, Arthur still doesn't get why she acts so strangely. Now pay attention, because the vibe shifts instantly when a girl's scream echoes through the hall. They brush off the drama to test new armor, but then, chaos. Arthur rushes over to find her sprawled on the stone floor. He asks if she fell, but she claims a noble shoved her while leaving. She apologized for the bump, but he grabbed her arm and threw her down. Arthur can't believe such cruelty until a cup of wine is splashed directly into his face by the noble. Dripping with wine, the brute Cedric says Julian deserved it for spilling his drink. After processing this nonsense, Arthur yells for the punk to finally grow up. Arthur tries to explain that knights should never act this way. Daniel steps up to confront the bully, and suddenly, Cedric's face twists into a wicked, knowing grin at the sight of him. It had been years since he last saw the terrified look on Daniel's face. Cedric greets him like total trash, asking if he's still playing at being a knight. Since he believes Daniel is born to lose, he sees no point in his training. From the fire in their eyes, it's clear there's serious history here. While they clash, Arthur wonders how on earth these two know each other. Cedric mocks Arthur's uniform and sneers that a piece of trash like Daniel couldn't possibly have any real friends in the kingdom. Arthur still can't comprehend who this arrogant noble thinks he is. But arguing with a madman is a waste of breath. Julian was visibly shaken, and Daniel looked like he wanted the ground to swallow him whole. Arthur decided it was smarter to retreat before things turned into a bloodbath. But you saw that coming, right? Suddenly, the bully gets smacked in the head by something flying through the air. Neither of them expected this. As a metal mug hits the stones, it's clear Julian threw it. Stunned and enraged, Cedric asks if the girl has completely lost her mind. Julian stands firm and tells the delinquent to be gone. She boldly defends Daniel, calling him her true friend. Then she goes for the throat, telling the noble he's not the only one who can play dirty. The two stare each other down while everyone holds their breath in the tense silence. But then, suddenly, the heavy tension is broken by the sound of a messenger's bell. Against his will, Cedric has to step aside to hear the news. It seemed the message was urgent. He had to leave immediately. Julian was furious that he tried to flee without offering a proper apology. Cedric just threw her a vulgar gesture before vanishing, leaving Julian fuming and Arthur breathing a sigh of relief. He still didn't understand the chaos, but with no time to waste, Daniel returned to his tournament prep, drawing the blonde's focus back to the duel. Later that evening, Julian was grateful for the escort home. Arthur worried her noble parents would hate her torn tunic, but she promised to make up a convincing excuse. She was honestly happy that he stepped in to help. She waved goodbye with a beaming smile, making Arthur finally see her in a better light. After bidding her farewell, the two boys walked back together. Arthur couldn't keep quiet any longer and asked who that arrogant noble from the hall actually was. Daniel explained that he was an old friend he used to associate with. Everything finally clicked for Arthur. He realized why the young man struggled so much with his own self-worth and confidence. Because the past was still too painful to face, they said their goodbyes rather abruptly. That night, Daniel sat alone in the corner of his chamber, trying to make sense of his memories. He remembered the day Cedric smashed his training sword in half with a single kick. In his broken mind, it made sense. A loser like him didn't deserve it. The next morning begins with Julian's bright and dazzling smile. Arthur asks how it went, and thankfully, you and I know her parents didn't suspect a thing. Stick with me, we are diving into a world of nights where Julia heads out for chores while Silas stays behind, only to realize Dorian has vanished. Right then, Dorian catches up with Julia and offers to help her with the heavy lifting. But first, he makes sure to apologize for what happened yesterday. Julia acts like it was nothing, claiming that Noble was not worth her time, but Dorian can feel her entire body trembling with fear. As he protects her, Dorian notices her hands are ice cold and shaking. Finally, Julia breaks down, her eyes flooding with tears. She admits she has never faced such a threat before, which makes Silas realize how serious this situation really is. Later that night, Dorian sits before his vision stone and prepares to enter the magical combat simulation once again. Silas is already there and asks about the new gear. Dorian thanks him for the loan, even if the blonde knight plays it off. Dorian still finds it strange to speak through magic instead of writing. Silas tells him it is fine, laughing about how his brother used to think he was being summoned. Since 5 warriors are required for a match, the others begin to join. A grandmaster sorcerer known as Sir Cedric arrives first. Next is Kane, a legendary knight followed by the famous Nathan, another high-tier legend. Everyone greets each other with high energy, though they worry Alexander might join from the local guild hall nearby. Silas realizes he might actually have to duel against him. Thoughts aside, the young knight's eyes light up when he sees his idol, Lord Noel. Silas starts gushing about being his biggest fan in the kingdom. Surprisingly, Lord Noel has seen his previous duels through magical scrying sessions. A new recruit joins, and Silas is stunned by how deep his voice sounds. He gives a cautious hello, half expecting it to be Alexander in disguise. But after seeing how laid back the newcomer is, Silas pushes his worries aside and stays friendly. Now that things are clear, he feels much more at ease. Now pay attention, because the tournament host finally arrives to call everyone to order for the grand competition. Sir Cedric looks at the host as if he is a living legend. The host begins greeting the noble warriors. After showing some respect to Cedric, he thanks Dorian, saying the event would not be nearly as epic without their help. First, he asks Sir Cedric to make a pick. You can see the sorcerer is overwhelmed with emotion. Silas asks if Dorian is nervous and tells him to relax. Nathan wonders if they are friends, and Silas confirms they went to academy together. The elite player thinks that is fascinating, since he brought a companion along as well. The host announces he has prepared a training arena and 5 rival contenders for them to face. To his shock, one rival is Lady Isabella. Silas cannot believe his eyes seeing her on the opposing side. Despite hearing 3 pros were coming, Silas had no idea the Lady Isabella was one of the high knights involved. Whispers about Nathan's skill travel through the magic stones, causing quite a stir since they are all in the same hall. Either way, Silas is fired up to become a true professional knight and join a legendary squad. The host tells them to enjoy the battle and finally signals the start of the magical simulation. On Dorian's side, Sir Cedric takes charge, asking which positions the knights will hold. Nathan asks about everyone's combat strengths. Silas and the small warrior choose to be guardians, while Cain becomes the slayer, leaving Dorian to decide his fate. See that? Nathan is confused why the lowest-ranked squire is taking so long to choose. He checks Dorian's combat history and is completely stunned. Seconds later, he rushes to ask if Dorian will be guardian or slayer. Sir Cedric is shocked Dorian even gets a choice, but Nathan explains this is just practice. Feeling bold, Dorian finally chooses to be the slayer. Without any complaints, Nathan takes the role of the oracle. Since the enemies are strong, Nathan says they cannot waste time and demands a primary guardian. Sir Cedric steps up with massive hype, promising to hold the line as he reveals his true, beastly power. The entire enemy squad realizes they must take him down first. The sorcerer looks ready to tear them apart. But as the rivals focus their magic on him, his strength and spirit begin to fade under the pressure. At the last second, he is saved by Nathan's healing light, cast from a safe distance away. Dorian shouts for Cedric to keep fighting because he has his back. Then, the beastly guardian erupts with newfound fury. The slayers quickly rally behind Sir Cedric to rain down devastating strikes. And trust me, you and I just saw a masterpiece as the guardian delivers a punch that obliterates the enemy. All right, you and I are about to see a common squire shock the greatest knights in the realm. Sir Stephen thanks Nanette for the magic. Unlike when he was under heavy fire, Julian looks ready to pin every single one of them down. Lady Alara starts to worry as the tension rises. She has fought many duels with Sir Caden, who heard rumors of him joining a house. But Julian is not her concern. It is that mysterious man in the back who is incredibly powerful, even for a simple squire. Now pay attention to the shadows. An assassin suddenly creeps toward Sir Nance near the heart of the citadel. The elite knight fails to react in time, but someone is there to shield him, striking the intruder down, and that man is Drake. The warband leaps back into the fray, and even as Lord Solaire cheers for the young hero, Sir Nance begins to doubt him. Sir Sebastian feels the same way because after that display, it is obvious he was hiding his true title. When the battle ended, everyone fought well, but Drake stole the glory with 17 kills and 0 wounds taken. Julian is beaming with pride, while Sir Caden just sits in total silence, lost in his own thoughts. Lady Sarah praises the hero, saying he basically won the war, but Drake insists on sharing the victory with his entire squad. Changing the subject, Julian asks if the elite knight still wants to trade duties. But after a brief pause, the boy decides to stay as he is, which leaves the entire council scratching their heads. Julian speaks up, calling him a legend and refusing to let a mere squire take the lead in battle. It makes far more sense for the veteran to focus on the vanguard, right? That is where the real glory is found. But Sir Nance admits our hero handled the pressure like a king. The Lord Herald praises the knights, saying they surpassed all his expectations. He goes on to hype up the strikers and the shield bearers, who were absolutely magnificent on the field. As a lowly recruit, he knows he could never survive a high-stakes battle like this one. Still, he stops the celebration to ask a question. Getting straight to the point, the herald says he knows he is no squire. Everyone is shocked by the accusation, so Lord Solaire tries to explain, but Sir Sebastian cuts him off. You and I both know how terrifying it is to be the center of attention like this, especially for a quiet recluse. But before any trouble starts, Drake reveals the truth. He says the title is his, and it is not some stolen identity. Plus, he is not using forbidden sorcery or cheating to win, so Sir Sebastian quickly asks for the full details. Finally, the hero tells the story about starting his journey in the Western Kingdom before traveling to the Eastern lands. Then the herald asks what his rank was in those far-off lands, and the boy calmly says he was a grand legend. The high-ranking lords are not even surprised. but young Julian is left completely speechless by the news. Silence fills the hall once more until the herald understands. 𝒂𝒐𝒍𝒅 prays for a way that does not end in Drake being banished. But even with a penalty looming, Sir Sebastian thinks the tale is magnificent. In his eyes, this legend will spread through every tavern, bringing him endless fame, which is the only thing that matters in this merchant world. 𝒂𝒐𝒍𝒅 asks if there will be trouble, but Lord Sebastian promises there will not be since Drake did not mean to deceive. He also mentions they are lucky because the master knight of the rival house quit, so they just need one more legend. Everyone agrees to the plan, but once again, Lady Alara's voice rings out over the crystal, begging to be chosen. The herald says he will pick someone from the militia. After all this madness, Lady Sarah looks at the hero and, letting out a heavy sigh, gives him a relieved hug. Before they can talk, Lady Sarah calls the whole team together to present them with their prize, enchanted armor. Drake is stunned since his personal vault is completely empty. Then Sir Sebastian thanks them for fighting in his royal tournament. He is thrilled this event is growing so large, and that is why he created official colors for each battalion. Suddenly, the hero's clothes glow with a golden light, and without a single word, the enchanted armor appears on his body. Since it is a team uniform, the exact same transformation happens to every other knight in the group. Julian thinks the gear is incredible, and 𝒂𝒐𝒍𝒅 jokes that the hero can finally stop wearing those commoner rags. But in his chambers, Sir Nance analyzes Drake, who reached elite levels in just 40 battles. He asks his brother Milo if he finds it strange. He reviews the record of the last duel, from the very start down to the smallest fraction of a second. Drake reacted instantly. Even with just 20 heartbeats of warning, the boy managed to strike his mark perfectly. Such inhuman speed is something Sir Nance believes is far too perfect for any mortal to truly possess. And trust me, we're just scratching the surface of this young hero's legendary past in the Western Kingdom. Stick with me, you and I are about to watch Tristan gather his squad for a final feast. Poor Eliza is crushed, she will not be competing in the tournament. Julian kept dreaming of a legendary new combat style they call Thanatos. At lightning speed, Tristan and the young squire dash off until the lad spots a hidden enemy. Noticing it was aiming at our hero, he tries to shout, but in a panic, the blow lands first. Lord Sterling halts the training to share some wisdom. They had been grinding non-stop, so they needed to bond. After all, as a solid knightly squad, they should vibe together. Which sounds exactly like something a wise sage would say. First, they pick titles, and he chooses J. The squire decides to roll with Mr. Boy, while the knight K9 sticks to his name. Silas picks the nickname Aegis for himself, explaining it in the common tongue. Aegis was supposedly the name of a god's shield. And the way you say it is Aegis, with a strong emphasis. Tristan thinks that sounds epic. And the squire finally learns how to say it right. Silas mentions his real name means to protect in the old language. But he plays his role as a vanguard, and honestly, the nickname Aegis just fits. Now here is where it gets interesting. Pay attention to how Tristan reacts to his new title. He is shaking. Lord Sterling was just curious about what the dark nickname meant. So, our hero replies a bit shyly that it means Reaper. Straight from ancient mythology, the squire cracks up because he thought it meant psychopath, then asks why he chose such a name. Tristan was ready to say he had no reason, but he saw Silas looking so curious. He gave in and revealed that since his name means guiding people, he used the Reaper to mean guiding people to death. Silas knows folks search the dictionary for cool names, often struggling to find words in other languages that sound legendary enough for their titles. So, keeping all this in mind, Lord Sterling simplified the story behind the name. But the next morning, when Silas calls him Reaper, Tristan looks super uncomfortable and feels a bit silly. Silas decides to stick with the name anyway, but their talk is interrupted by the sound of bells. Looks like the whole kingdom is buzzing since a spike in the tournament difficulty has been announced. Of course, Silas saw this coming. On the rival team is a knight named Julian, whose nickname is Domino. Silas finds the news a bit discouraging, but tries to stay positive since Tristan is on his side, though he worries about putting pressure on his friend. You saw that too, right? For the first time, our main hero Tristan actually looks ready for war. Silas keeps hoping a legend will show up. Then, Tristan spots the name Naylis on the list, his oldest rival. In the end, Tristan already knew that Weirdo would be in the tournament. But even though he looks different, he admits he is not confident. He has never beaten Xander in a duel. But even without a win, because of the emotional weight he carries, Tristan insists this time will be different. It is clear the blonde knight does not doubt his determination. He knows he will face a tough foe, but this trial is about teamwork, not just solo strength. At the academy gates, everyone spots Silas and rushes over to ask if he is really joining the cup. While the hero is swarmed by the crowd, he confirms he is in. That announcement makes the fans even more hyped. Later, a lad asks if his friend wants to hang out, but he turns it down for the cup. The friend does not even play, but keeps pushing him to give the trial a shot. Since everyone is buzzing about it, he feels left out and decides to watch from the same house. It is normal to gather with friends, but a girl says she must watch with her sister, a famous knightly player. Her friend even asks if the girl has played. But she is not into it because she loves watching. Suddenly, the chaos of the main character's match pops up. At some point back in the training, the squire asks if Tristan is okay. Jay asks if they are ready, and Tristan nearly passes out. Lord Sterling checks if the Reaper is all right, but since the academy is buzzing about the tournament, Silas explains the nerves. And that is where we leave it. Trust me, you are going to want to see the battle that follows. Arthur should shake off his worries and give it his all. The charismatic knight's words totally floor the young blonde. The Grand Herald sends word that the trial begins at 3 p.m. Every noble house nods to show they understand. Finally, the bells chime 3 across the kingdom. Ben introduces himself to the masses as the Herald Swagbuzz IX. You and I are about to witness the most hyped event of the year, the grand tournament of the Silver Crest. Across the realm, nobles are ready and waiting, even in the manner of the Lady Knight's famous sister. On the other hand, Sir Yi looks uneasy. But back to the broadcast, Swagbuzz reveals another master will join the commentary. He reaches out to welcome the legendary battle analyst, the great Lord 𝒂𝒐𝒏𝒕. A famous wanderer turned pro-strategist, he is here to make this an epic experience for the entire kingdom. More commoners are stunned by the sheer level of prestige surrounding this royal tournament. Checking the roster, everyone is shocked to see 3 legends on each side. 𝒂𝒐𝒏𝒕 wonders why it is only one single match. Annoyed by the question, Swagbuzz snaps back that he would know if he followed the kingdom's official decrees. Every time he tried to duel, he got crushed for being a total amateur. Now watch this. He got so mad, he offered 1,000 gold crowns to any warrior who could actually win. Tavern posters spread the word. In the end, even though it was not the original plan. This is the story that led to today. Now, they focus on the trial, starting with an interview with House One's leader. The sister of that noble girl gasps when she sees him on the magic mirror. But maybe it is just his friendly smile that feels different. 𝒂𝒐𝒏𝒕 credits Lord Nam for the massive crowd. Regarding Sir Minyu, the herald asks for a vow. This sudden pressure makes the young knight stop and think. Unlike a humble knight, Nam says House 2 will fall, shocking every lord and lady in the stands. Arthur takes it the hardest, dropping to his knees under the crushing weight of the challenge. The legend of the Shadow Wanderers takes place in a far-off wasteland where a girl runs until a spell grazes her face. Right behind her is a marksman and a rogue samurai ready to take her out. From above, a sword maiden prepares a fatal blow, her blade descending until suddenly. You see that? Her eyes glow with strange magic, and she vanishes right in front of her enemies. The samurai's steel craters the earth. When the dust clears, they are left wondering where she went. Despite their search, she is gone from the streets, having blinked to the top of a stone tower. In this world, people possess the gift, powers like telekinesis or the ability to teleport, with vast arcane resources at their call. Rogue gangs use these powers and mana crystals to mark their territory and expand their dark domains. Meanwhile, regular knights fight these sorcerers with basic weapons. It is an endless war for land and power. In Yumpo's view, this rivalry fuels the fire between the two groups. Sorcerers use flashy skills that make for a grand show, but they lack raw physical defense. Regular warriors hit hard but lack agility. That is why most protectors and supports are gifted with magic. Switching gears, Yumpo thinks the elite knights will mostly stick to traditional steel. Instead of spilling secrets, 𝒂𝒏𝒕 hits up House 1's captain, who is grinning from ear to ear. Every tavern treats Lord Nam like a rock star, and the herald is curious about his confidence. The man admits he has been following the herald's decrees and thought this duel would be a blast. Yumpo asks about the squad. Nam says they have solid players and promises that everyone is going to have an epic time. The herald asks who will be the champion of the next bout, and he screams, "Psychope," for all to hear. Looking at our protagonist's face, you can tell he is feeling the absolute heat of the moment. As 𝒂𝒏𝒂𝒏 probes about Minyu, the leader hesitates, but then vows to totally wreck his rival's team. With that command energy, the crowd is buzzing, and the noble sister takes a sip of wine. 𝒂𝒏𝒂𝒏 wishes Nam luck and calls House 2, but for some reason, the magic mirror will not connect. Awkwardly, the herald asks if the young squire is feeling nervous. But you and I know he is ready when he vows his best. The prize of 1,000 gold is now within reach. All right, you and I are about to watch Herald commentate as the marshal calls the First Legion forward. Clad in their shining armor, the atmosphere is electric, and Herald knows this roster is absolutely legendary. Sir Percival looks like a celebrity, and Sir Mordred is nearly a knight commander. But the real shock, Tristan, our secret master duelist, is right in the thick of it. Still, Duke Roland warned everyone to keep an eye on him, so he is definitely being watched. Finally, they praise young Alian for his deeds in the trials, which actually brings tears to the boy's eyes. Wrapping up the first introductions, the Second Legion is called. The spotlight hits that villain Julian, and standing right before Tristan is his bitter rival, Julian of House Young. After years of silence, a massive grudge match is looming, and our hero is not backing down. Before the duel begins, Lord Cashin pulls the boy aside, leaving Tristan feeling completely unsettled and full of dread. Just a single glance from Julian sends a cold shiver down his spine. Arthur notices the tension and asks if his friend has the jitters. He even jokes about a quick break before the royal match finally begins. Pay attention here. Arthur begs him to talk as Tristan reveals the chilling parley request sent by the wicked Julian of House Young. Tristan seeks counsel, fearing his temper will flare if he ignores the summons, but he hates this entire situation. Arthur gets furious at that snake, sensing a ploy to break his friend's focus before the battle even starts. The blonde knight thinks Tristan should just ignore the invitation and move on. He won't force him, but someone else will. From the shadows, a familiar voice calls out. Lady Alina is right there as our hero prepares for the grand tournament final. The lady jokes about the coincidence and asks if he is stalking her now. Tristan denies it immediately. She sits beside him, apologizing for the tease since she knew he would be competing today. She asks if he is ready and warns that a certain noble wants a word. Alina wonders if he will accept. When Tristan names Julian, she just stares blankly at him. Suddenly, she remembers that brute who shoved her at the tavern. You and I know she's mad, she yells, asking if they're friends, but Tristan shuts it down. She grabs the boy's scroll to reject the request herself, which actually makes Arthur crack a wide smile. Julian sends another request immediately, making Tristan's anxiety spike through the roof. He keeps sending them despite the constant rejections, one after another, like a man possessed by madness. Alina struggles to keep hitting no, but the requests just keep flooding in. The man is acting like a total stalker, bombarding the hero with invites until Arthur finally loses his cool and starts to freak out completely. Elena, beyond annoyed, vows to humiliate the troublemaker, but she has a much better plan. With a sly grin at Tristan, she signals for him to handle this his way. Still dazed, she nudges him to speak, promising to defend his honor. Heading to Julian's tent, the villain is still frantically sending out his summons. Unbelievably, the fool has no idea why Tristan is avoiding him. But then the scroll is accepted, and he sighs with total relief. Once the link is open, Julian starts the conversation by calling Tristan a peasant. But Tristan fires back with a very rude gesture and vanishes, leaving Julian completely stunned by that incredibly bold move. Tristan doesn't even flinch, blocking the villain like a true professional. It might be new for him, but the shock eventually sets in. When it hits, Julian goes into a blind rage, while Elena laughs until her sides ache. Since the hero got the last word, she absolutely loves seeing the villain so frustrated. As the horn blows, Elena tells Tristan to focus and steps back. On the field, Arthur tells him to move. The grand arena announcement begins, and luckily, at the very last second, the boy leaps through the gateway with his squad. Once gathered, the host declares the goal is to capture the ancient beacon first. After that, teams fight for territory across Sector A and Sector B, aiming for 3 total points to secure victory. Scoring requires capturing a crystal and purifying it for 3 seconds. Each team sees these holy objectives glowing in bright purple light. When the first clash ends, the next begins. The losing side gets a head start on the next beacon location. The defeated team will then enter a desperate defensive stand. They will hold ground near their spawn, gaining a slight edge. This cycle continues for 5 rounds, with everyone fighting tooth and nail for the crystal advantage. It is a massive 5 versus 5 war for the first beacon, but through Tristan's eyes, there is a dark twist. Despite the chaotic battle, Julian seems laser-focused on hunting Tristan down. When it is time to choose roles, Tristan selects the Vanguard class and the primary striker position. He readies his steel, and trust me, you and I are about to see him dominate the field with his squad. All right, stick with me as the battle for the first stronghold begins. Nathan warns that capturing it is vital and tells Cedric to watch their flank. As the Vanguard, Caspian spots 5 knights approaching and transforms his mana to prepare for the clash. 𝒁𝒊 notices one enemy is missing, which puzzles Nathan until he spots Mordred flanking from the shadows with incredible speed, clearly using forbidden movement skills. Mordred's plan was likely to assassinate their cleric from behind while they were distracted. But instead, he ignores Nathan completely and charges straight for Arthur. Luckily, at the very last second, our hero barely dodges a lethal blow. Even though he is a fragile assassin, he is playing like a reckless juggernaut targeting Arthur. Since he revealed his position, Cedric is ready to strike back. Baron York screams in shock as they secure the first kill only 10 seconds in. The first blood goes to Mordred of the Second Kingdom, a warrior of the high paladin rank. The heralds explain he used a dash ability to infiltrate, but surprisingly, instead of hitting the cleric, he went straight for the team's main attacker. The heralds believe this happened because during the first 30 seconds, all special abilities were hidden from the enemy. From his view, since Nathan is the master knight, Mordred might have assumed he was the damage dealer instead of support. Even the crowd is baffled why Nathan let a grandmaster lead the assault. Caspian asks if he is sabotaging them, but Lady Alara agrees with the heralds. Using a grandmaster for pure offense seemed like a solid plan, but Cedric knew for a fact that the strike on Arthur was no accident. Regardless, with this opening, the First Kingdom begins seizing the primary stronghold of the entire battle. The Second Kingdom's assassination attempt completely failed, and Mordred was sent back to the recovery gates to wait. The heralds expected him to regroup with his squad, but nope, that was not happening. Caspian is totally lost, wondering why he is charging in alone. Knowing where the cleric is, the allies surround Lady Alara to keep her safe. But once again, Nathan gets ignored, and Arthur has to stay alert because, just like before, he is the sole target of his old rival's fury. With the numbers in their favor, Mordred gets crushed by the allied knights and is sent back to base without breaking a sweat. Now the heralds are losing their minds because the entire enemy team is forced to wait for his return. They believe the only reason for this total chaos is that the team's chemistry is completely falling apart. But Nathan, the commander of Kingdom 1, is not convinced. He signals a new assault. Suddenly, a beastkin girl dives from the sky, nearly striking the cleric. She is incredibly fast, landing a flurry of strikes like it is nothing at all. Now watch this. Arthur takes her down with a perfect shot, but then, blinding light, he is hit by a massive spell from nowhere. Just as his vision clears, Mordred appears right in front of his face with a truly haunting grin. With one swift strike, he eliminates our protagonist. After falling, Arthur apologizes, but Cedric promises they will hold the line until he returns. Nathan keeps providing support, but he wonders why one enemy is still missing from the main battle. Finally, after what feels like a literal eternity, Arthur recovers and rushes to help, but the hidden enemy ambushes him from the darkness, landing a brutal slash across his back. Arthur yells, calling out the enemy for being in the wrong spot instead of the center. Cedric and York are stunned, even throwing shade at him. The Second Kingdom desperately needed to fight fair to secure the sacred relic. But even as their main attacker, Mordred camps at the First Kingdom's base. This was the same knight who tried to kill Arthur earlier. Nathan finally realizes this is personal. We both see this as a blood feud. Over the magic link, Arthur warns he is being pinned down and apologizes, but Nathan explains the whole team is feeling the pressure. Lady Alara is convinced the Second Kingdom hates this and calls Mordred a saboteur, which catches Arthur by surprise. The commander's final order is simple. Our hero needs to turn this chaos into their greatest advantage. In the enemy camp, the beastkin girl is screaming, wondering why she is fighting alone. A noblewoman screams back, blaming Mordred for everything. She has been bitter toward him ever since he bullied the lower-ranked knights. The girl starts weeping, begging for teamwork, but Mordred does not care until his own commander calls him a useless nuisance. Mordred has been so obsessed with killing Arthur that he is failing his duty to the crown. The enemy captain finally snaps, telling him to put down his blade and just watch from the sidelines. It is clear the boy has forgotten the goal and does not even want to win anymore. If he wants to lose, the captain will let him, but she will not allow him to drag the entire kingdom down. Deep down, the noblewoman agrees. Mordred finally swallows his pride and announces he is targeting the enemy vanguard because their kingdom simply cannot afford to lose. So what do you and I think? Everyone is shocked he backed down so easily. Wild, right? All right, you and I are diving into a high-stakes noble duel that is about to get messy. Lady Alara warns that Neopilles won't dare defy a superior rank, especially since he has a clear goal, leaving the team with zero choice. Back at the heart of the arena, the royal heralds are shouting about the round finally coming to a close. Sir Sufin fends off the beastkin girl, who is giving her all to reach the relic, but he misses Xander sneaking up from behind him. Count Neopilles has a secret trick, as both Duan and Lady Alara turn on him, forcing the man to retreat for now. In the final seconds, the girl screams for Bennett to help, and the knight really bolts as fast as possible to the relic. He touches the objective and starts to capture it, but with only 3 measly seconds left in the entire match. It is a total no-go since he is all alone. Bennett fails the capture, and with only 1% damage, the relic heals back. So the first round wraps up with House 1 scoring a win. The Archmage and Sir Kay are hyped, celebrating their first victory. In the next round, Sector B2 for House 2 opens up, and they have to defend it for 5 minutes. Then Neopilles chimes in via Arcane Link, saying he will return soon. Honestly, the heralds are kind of bummed about the lack of bloodshed. Lord Yono blames their broken coordination, but knows the real showdown for the crown is only just getting started. Meanwhile, the spectators are scratching their heads, wondering why they are chasing eliminations instead of the sacred relic objective. Anyway, with the first point in their pocket, House 1 is in the lead, and the second attack on Sector B2 begins. The master spellcaster takes the lead, and when he starts feeling some shots, he warns about enemies working from behind. On the second floor, 3 enemies pop up, and from the looks of it, they are going to be a handful for 𝒂𝒏𝒕. So it is clear House 2 is spread out, making Commander Nam shout out some rare praise for their calculated strategy. Compared to the first floor, the upper levels are way better for sneaky plays. So, Nam says they must flush them out. Sir Julian notices that even now, 𝒂𝒐𝒓𝒆𝒕𝒍𝒚 is still keeping a deadly eye on our protagonist during the battle. He knows better than to underestimate him because of his sneaky ability called backstab, which is perfect for taking people out. Now pay attention here. This is the kind of sneak attack that changes everything for our hero and his entire team. In just 1 second, the assassin is right behind him, and without wasting any time, he goes for a brutal attack. Then Sir Duan reacts fast, unleashing a storm of shots at the assassin. Finally, the Oracle gives props for focusing the healer. Not even the Grandmaster gets why they are suddenly working together. Anyway, it is finally time for Julian to respond. And after getting knocked out, he feels a bit embarrassed. He apologizes and suggests they should focus on taking down the enemies. Maybe swapping offensive power for better movement speed instead. After thinking for a second, our protagonist summons an enchanted repeater, and he warns that he will flank from the right to strike. Sir 𝒂𝒏𝒂𝒏 says it will be legendary if he takes someone out, and even if he fails, he can still sneak in. The focus shifts back to the center. With Sir Bennett on guard, the hero must stay sharp. He thinks he is invisible and starts gathering vital intel on exactly where the enemies are. Then, with that magic repeater he summoned, he figures he should be able to take down at least one knight. He aims for the player's head, since that is where the big damage hits thanks to the critical strike factor. You saw that too, right? Total elimination in the blink of an eye as the player vanishes from the field in a flash. By taking out one dealer, the hero signals his team, who appear right away. He knows the tank is hiding nearby, but the moment he is distracted, he takes a hit to the stomach that knocks the wind out of him, and losing his life essence drops his weapon. In the end, Duan just asks when he showed up, but General Manhwa of House 2 is not interested in answering him. With at least 2 bars of life essence left, the protagonist thinks he can still turn this game around. So, aiming for the enemy's weak spot, he decides to act. But unfortunately, a shimmering protective barrier pops up. He keeps attacking, but gets desperate when he realizes nothing is working. Commander Nam warns that he cannot provide any support right now. So, now the only option left for the protagonist is to use a feint to trick the opponent. But just as he thinks of doing that, he gets hit in the stomach again. Then once more, he wonders who this guy is. The leader of House 2, Manhwa, takes out Duan. After 2 more eliminations, the heralds warn about the hero's imminent takedown. But since 3 enemies are down, Commander Nam calls him to the relic to begin the capture. And while the healer is capturing, Lady Alara is on cover duty until suddenly, with a loud crash, Manhwa shows up to finish them. And trust me, that is where everything falls apart. Stick with me. Things are about to get ugly for Alaric as 2 enemy knights close in from both sides. While waiting to rally, he hears the desperate shouts of his squires, followed by a sudden, blood-curdling scream. When he finally opens his eyes, his gaze is sharp, but his trembling hands and pale face tell another story. The Silver Guard is far more coordinated this time, keeping the First Legion completely away from the Mana Heart. Using the castle terrain perfectly, the Silver Guard has set up an impenetrable, legendary defense for the ages. The heralds noted that teamwork won the first bout, but this defensive line is on an entirely different level. With Milo standing as an unbreakable human shield, a direct charge is completely out of the question for now. Their legendary archer is dominating so hard that no one can face him alone. With only 60 seconds remaining, Commander Nathaniel warns that they have exactly one final shot left to use their secret arts. First, Zoran must trigger his primal rage to lock the enemies down. If he succeeds, he should trap at least 2 of them. Then, Lord Dion will unleash his Skyfall spell, calling down a projectile with terrifying, world-shattering power. Watch closely. They need to strike the second the enemy is bunched up and stunned to have any chance. If they can eliminate 2 foes in that single moment, the entire gamble will have been worth the risk. Finally, Knight Cain will summon a flame vortex while Alistair boosts their strength. Everything rests on Alaric making this whole plan work. But perhaps, because he was distracted when the secret art was discussed, Alistair triggers his power prematurely and charges blindly into the fray. The perfect plan crumbles instantly, but there is no time to argue now. As Alaric breaks left, Nathaniel screams for him to cover the right flank instead. He begins channeling his ultimate power. Leaping into the air, he finds himself face to face with 3 enemy knights. Standing among them is the formidable Lord Minyu. Minyu looks completely unfazed. As Alaric closes the distance, Minyu slams him into a wall with one brutal, crushing blow. It is as if he predicted the move, completely nullifying Alaric's primal rage in an instant. Frustrated, Nathaniel pivots the strategy on the fly, shouting that he will strike the enemy with a weakening curse. But before he can finish, he collapses to the dirt, put to sleep by a hidden spell from the enemy. He becomes an easy target for 𝒍𝒚 to finish off. Seeing this, Alaric and Knight Cain finally unleash their strongest secret arts. The Skyfall spell and Flame Vortex slam directly into Minyu, completely shattering his heavy plate armor upon impact. However, the Silver Guard's priestess casts a grand healing spell, instantly restoring her allies to full strength. You and I saw that coming, right? That defense is just too synchronized to break through so easily. Alistair apologizes as the round ends, but suddenly a magic signal flares. The mana heart has been claimed by someone else. Alaric panics, realizing Lord Cedric is behind this trick. The heralds notice one player was missing from the entire chaotic skirmish. With Prince Nicholas starting the next phase with a bold move like this, it is a masterclass in deception. As Alistair charges the front line alone, Cedric narrows his eyes, sensing that something is very wrong here. His squire notes that Alistair's aim is sloppy, and the rest of the First Legion looks completely shell-shocked and stunned. Nicholas scoffs at the opponents, calling them mere amateurs for such a reckless push, despite his own past aggressive plays. He asks how long the buff lasts. 10 seconds later, Alistair's temporary power fades away, leaving him completely vulnerable. Once the power drops, Alistair, Nathaniel, and Alaric are all cut down by the enemy, leaving the heralds absolutely stunned. With only 2 fighters left, Nicholas tries to retreat, but his ally yells at him to stay. It is 2 versus 5. Even if the fallen rally, they will not reach the gate in time. Cedric decides it is better to concede the point. Since the First Legion has no secret arts remaining, their tactician is left with no room for a counter-argument. A few seconds later, they arrive at the second marker. Nicholas extends his hand, causing a glowing warning message to flash as the entire area becomes restricted. The Silver Guard had prepared the ultimate defense for this phase. As the timer hits 0, Nicholas uses a haste spell to accelerate. The third round to defend the inner gate begins. It starts with the heart already claimed by the enemies. Looking at Lord Cedric's smug face, he is loving every second. Alaric, however, is devastated. It will take 5 long minutes for that mana heart to fully activate for the enemy. The spectators argue that even if both legions arrive together, the First Legion still needs 15 more seconds to win. Rejoining the fray, Alaric storms towards Cedric, absolutely furious and ready to knock him away from the pulsing mana heart. Suddenly, a massive bolt screams through the air, crashing down and completely blocking his path. Wild, right? All right, you and I are about to see this defensive barrier fail in the most chaotic way possible. When that 10-second enchantment shatters, the blonde knight is totally lost because the defenders suddenly look like the ones attacking. It is looking like a total disaster for the Blue Vanguard, as they start losing their defensive ground before the fight even properly begins. Even the Royal Heralds think it is time for the squad to retreat and regroup. That girl with the legendary sister wonders if Julian is feeling the pressure. But her sister argues the real problem is their champion, who simply cannot stand his ground against a powerhouse like Malachi. Once the soul relic hits full charge, the round ends in another stinging defeat for the Blue Vanguard. The warriors are stunned because they missed so many chances, like using more heavy knights to force the enemy into a direct, bloody stalemate. Either way, the third siege is done, and the fourth round begins with the Crimson Guard launching another assault. With the Vanguard trailing by 2 losses, the Royal Heralds are already calling this game over. Not giving up, the leader asks for a plan, but Eldon just bolts off without a word, leaving him totally baffled. Even the crowd can see that the previous round was enough to crush the team's fighting spirit. Eldon is kicking himself for ignoring Julian's advice during the last chaotic clash. Silas feels terrible for wasting his ultimate strike, while Julian is still haunted by his failure to best Alistair since they were children. Stick with me here, because this is the moment where every single one of them hits rock bottom. They all know that one more loss means it is over. Commander Martha wastes no time shouting to her squad that they can still win this. She demands they snap out of their funk and prepare for a flawless defense that will force a final 5th round. With their leader's fire reignited, the Blonde Knight and Eldon get their motivation back, but Silas notices Julian is acting incredibly strange. He just keeps muttering over and over that he cannot win. Back at the manor, the older sister asks if Julian's weapon is garbage, though it is apparently better in a close-quarters fight. She suggests he needs a massive weapon instead, while Silas desperately tries to snap Julian back to reality as the pressure mounts. The girl struggles to explain exactly what she means by that. But she is convinced he needs a colossal weapon, and she cannot understand why he is so unmotivated to pick it up. Silas orders the group to regroup, and now the second team prepares to launch their assault on the 3rd fortress point. In the 7th district, the first team to secure 3 siege victories wins the whole war. While the enemies usually hide on high ground, it looks like our heroes are gearing up for a brutal, direct brawl. Both teams have elites, but Malachi is like an unbreakable iron wall, instantly crushing any attempt to break through. Meanwhile, Julian is showing off some incredible support skills, but it feels like he is totally wasting his true talent. Naturally, the crowd is furious that a Grandmaster Knight is being sidelined in such a minor role. They are calling him a basic squire, and even though the herald knows that is not true, he is starting to worry he misjudged things. Shifting focus, the enemy realizes one defender is missing, and their scout confirms the same thing. Their leader starts to freak out, praying that Julian is not just sabotaging the entire match. Now watch this part carefully, because everything changes in a split second. As the enemy mage finishes her buff spell, something happens. She gets struck right in the face, leaving her team completely baffled while the silver-haired girl starts screaming in panic. While the scout is stunned, the lead herald feels a massive wave of relief wash over him. Julian was not even on the front line. He was chilling in the tower behind them, and Alistair suddenly realizes Julian has switched to a sniper build. A sniper is a long-range marksman who lives and breathes in the shadows. The enemies think he only switched weapons out of desperation because he is about to lose the entire match. They figure it was just a lucky shot and will not happen again if they just keep their eyes peeled. The girl keeps watch, but suddenly notices that Julian has vanished from that tower. While trying to guess Julian's ability, she feels a sudden chill as he pulls the trigger, landing a devastating shot before she can even blink. With 2 allies already down, a wounded Malachi finally realizes just how much trouble they are actually in. Alistair shouts for them to fall back while they hunt down the hidden marksman. Our hero takes aim at his old friend, who barely manages to dodge a shot aimed right at his legs. Alistair feels insulted that Julian thinks he can actually catch him, but Julian just stays icy cold. And that is where we leave it. You and I both know Julian is about to show everyone what he is truly capable of. All right, you and I are about to watch Julian pull off a perfect counter-teleport, as he predicted Silas would appear, and already had his crossbow aimed. After all, he knew the guy was a pro at ambushes since they were boys. Silas keeps screaming that Julian is just a loser, but the hero's crossbow trigger is already pulled, and Silas's head is the next target under that icy stare. Geoffrey the Herald panics, and the bard is freaked out since only 15 seconds have passed since the duel started. Simply put, our master marksman pulled off an insane feat by taking down 3 champions in 15 seconds. He was so calm he seemed like a totally different person. A spectator in the crowd yells, remembering when Arthur predicted Julian would be their star knight because he holds a legendary champion rank over in the Western realm. Julian's focus breaks when he hears he's off the front line, but Sebastian clarifies that he's actually the team's new master marksman. Merlin says that a master marksman has to be elite since they are the key players. Now watch this part carefully. Julian was always a marksman, even with the drama he faced in the Eastern Kingdom. Because the marksman class is so difficult, the knight says they need to believe in him. Even though he initially thought he couldn't do anything with Silas around. Julian knew he could be a marksman, so not just Arthur, but the entire team agreed to trust the boy. Sebastian tells the hero not to be scared, because they are with pro knights. As a legendary champion, Julian is on that elite level and will definitely cause total chaos. He locks his aim onto Marcus, who grins and admits that Arthur has shown some truly solid leadership. After several shots, the pro knight's shield shatters, and he panics once he realizes he's being hunted by the enemy team's master marksman. Julian, the legendary champion of the Western realm, is getting massive praise from the bards for this insane comeback performance. His skill grabs everyone's attention, and the crowd goes wild. Julian bolts to find a higher vantage point. But here's the thing. Julian is almost taken out because the enemy knight Bennett is also a marksman. Julian knows he needs to find a place to hide first. Once he locates his opponent, he aims his crossbow and hits Bennett with pinpoint accuracy from far away, taking him out of the duel for good. The bards scream that someone has to charge the hero now. But that's what a marksman must prevent, and a king of his class definitely won't mess this up. After respawning, Bennett gives up his bow, but the girls know this puts them in trouble. Silas yells that they just need to push the protagonist away, but he's already been targeted, too. So, the two rivals start an internal feud after being eliminated by Julian. Arthur sends a clear message that it is absolutely not the time for squabbling. With only 2 minutes left, Merlin shouts that Julian is their pride and joy, believing more challengers will want to duel him now. Sebastian shouts from afar, asking for Julian's accuracy, and when he says 53%, Arthur can't help but grin with hype. Meanwhile, Julian thinks that Marcus must be plotting something incredibly sneaky for the next phase of the battle. Marcus could easily show up as a duelist and hunt Julian down. Surprise. That's exactly what's happening. Julian tries to keep his composure. But Marcus is insane, dodging every shot like he's literally reading the hero's mind. Julian shuts out the noise to focus on the kill. He lands a hit and switches to a physical strike, but it's his worst move and he's totally pressured. Panic rises as a lightning blade zaps his thigh, pinning him to the ground. With the enemy right there, Julian fires one last shot in a split second. School is chaos tomorrow. Students swarm Sebastian to talk about the grand championship, and he thanks the fans. Everyone watched just for him, and Sebastian says he's now buddies with Jay. Then they mention Julian's player name, sending a chill down the hero's spine. They call him a total beast. Sebastian says they're actually buddies now. But the real discussion is how unlucky the team was at the end. Later, Sebastian tells Julian about the fallout of being so famous after that match. Sebastian is super annoyed. Just then, Julia stumbles upon them, looking pretty grumpy too. Julia walks away, leaving Sebastian puzzled, and you and I have to wonder what's really up. All right, let's dive into this. A while ago, the girl questioned how Julian could enter the grand tournament, spotting his deception immediately. She has been on edge ever since, but Sebastian knew she was a tough person to handle. Still, he felt a bit let down by it. He asks our hero to join his nightly order, shocking him. You see, after yesterday's duel, Lord Nathan requested a private audience with him. And in a strange twist of fate, Nathan had made the exact same proposal that Sebastian just offered him right now. When Nathan proposed it, he claimed the boy would become a legendary champion of the entire realm. Our hero could not imagine it, yet the chance to fight alongside them was real. Nathan looked thrilled, fully expecting a yes. But our hero declined. He did not believe his swordplay was worthy, and he certainly was not one for handling courtly politics. He apologized with a deep bow. Panicked, Nathan quickly told him there was absolutely no need to rush such a massive decision. Despite the refusal, he urged our hero to simply consider it further. Now, let us head straight back into the present moment. Now Sebastian is pitching the squad proposal, putting him in an awkward spot again. Watch this carefully. The blonde knight believes they can build a squad if they find 3 more warriors. They will debut as champions during the first Grand League. He asks if the boy is finally in, knowing deep down his friend truly yearns for the life of a champion. This time, our hero grins and accepts, making his friend ecstatic. Sebastian immediately realizes they need to brainstorm and find a name for their order. Plus, he is absolutely fired up to start scouting for the remaining 3 members to join their new squad. Meanwhile, in a high tower within the capital, Marquis Miller gazes across the kingdom, lost in his own deep thoughts. In the memories of yesterday, both men were on the verge of collapse from the heavy blows they had traded. Julian gritted his teeth and raised his longbow, aiming for the Marquis, who dodged the shot with lightning-fast speed. But with a swift adjustment and incredible reflexes, he locked onto his foe's head and loosed the fatal arrow before the enemy could react, securing victory. Cruelly, Julian was struck too, ending his tournament run early. But Miller definitely hasn't forgotten who fell from the grace of victory first. Breaking the heavy tension, Lady Sarah arrives, announcing she has brought a feast for the weary warriors to enjoy. She asks if the squad is hungry, and one knight rushes to the food. Things seem relaxed, but everyone is still focused on Nathan. Sarah asks why he is brooding, leading the group to start chatting about the failed attempt to recruit our main hero. At that point, they only had 4 knights in the order, even with their newest recruit, Eugene, joining them. Finding elite warriors was tough. Jason simply could not stop thinking that having our main hero on the squad would be a game changer. Then Sarah mentions she heard the 2 squires he trained with are in his sister's academy class. Pay attention here. That catches his eye. Later, his famous sister prays her relative does not cause a scene, knowing how rowdy he can be. Anyway, Sebastian mentions he has secured some fine armor, even without winning the gold prize from the tournament. Now, all they need is a proper sword, and a focusing crystal for our main hero to begin his training. Julian suggests inviting a young mage to the squad, and the blonde knight agrees. But a girl eavesdropping looks strangely curious. Back at the training hall, Sebastian jokes that Julia must love the arena since she arrived there before they did. The girl asks to spar together, and for the first time, he actually smiles and agrees to the duel. Her parents let her train there, which the blonde finds impressive, but she lacks the quality magical gear at her estate to practice. She is still annoyed with our hero, though. Suddenly, the blonde's signaling stone vibrates with his sister's magical signature. Sensing something is wrong, he fears she is injured and needs him to rush to her aid immediately. He promises to talk later, while Julian hopes it is nothing serious. Inevitably, his eyes lock with the girl's, and he starts to sweat. She drops the cold facade and calls him out, asking if they are still going to spar as they had already promised. To settle things, she asks about his rank. He sees no harm in revealing he is the 300th strongest knight in the Western Kingdom. Julia feels humiliated, like a lowly hyena that accidentally tried to mess with a powerful and mighty lion. Julian has already reached the legendary paladin rank in the eastern lands. She thinks if she were that strong, she would be worthy. Struggling to find words, Julian asks if she practices other forms of combat besides this specific tournament. She says no, but insists the master rank is already something to flex about. Julia's face shows she clearly wasn't expecting the compliment. She reveals she started as a mere squire and trained relentlessly to reach her current status in the order. Excitedly, she explains her solo journey, but soon mocks her own skill. She prefers being a cleric, healing her allies in battle. If she heals our hero, he can completely decimate their enemies for her, which they both seem to really enjoy. And trust me, you and I just saw a bond form. Julia leaves the hall proud, until a mysterious magical scroll reaches her and makes her freeze. Bridge, all right, you and I are starting with a nightmare, a portrait taken from behind her, which is just incredibly creepy. To explain this, a creep appears saying he scoured her enchanted scrolls to find out where she goes to school. With hands on her shoulders, he says he sent word he was coming, but she ignored him. Then the man laughs and casually introduces himself as Barrett. The knight from the training grounds. Julia immediately tries to shake him off, feeling her skin crawl and terrified by all this invasive and creepy behavior. Barrett apologizes for the scare, but actually blames her for never replying to his messages. Still trembling, Julia asks why he is here, but the guy just blushes and tries to pet her head before she rejects him. Changing the subject, he complains he is hungry and reminds her she promised to pay for dinner. She does not remember that at all, but he just keeps rambling about her looking cuter in her portraits. Julia feels her skin crawl until he suddenly grabs her hand, crossing every possible line. The stalker uses force to get his way. Realizing she is not strong enough to escape his grasp, poor Julia starts to cry. Right before things get messy, a savior finally appears at the end of the tunnel for our terrified girl. Julian shouts for the man to unhand her at once. He claims to be a close friend, and feeling that strong grip, Barrett finally takes a step back. Bridge, now pay attention here, as our hero asks who this guy is and returns the lip balm she forgot. The two swap information while the weirdo just stands there, staring at the young students. The girl grabs Julian by the hand and bolts, leaving the frustrated stalker alone in the middle of the street. After a desperate dash, she explains that running was honestly their best move. This was not her first time, so she actually managed to record the whole scene with a mana stone. Realizing these creeps do not understand their own crimes, Julia always takes precautions against the sketchy guys who follow her. But even after all that terror, she refuses to let our hero escort her home. She admits she was just terrified and blames herself. The next day, Sophie asks if Julian happens to be free this Saturday. The hero says he is, so Sophie reveals that is when they will meet the mage, Silas. Since Silas has a voice that does not match his body, Julian is dying to see him. Sophie mentions Kieran is joining too, and Julian is curious since he already has a guild. The plan is to grab food and chat during practice. Suddenly, Julia pops up and invites herself. She overheard the two talking about forming an elite guild and looks super cute doing it. She says she would love to play, but Sophie makes it clear the requirement is to be at least master rank. Julia tries to say she is super close, but when that fails, she switches gears and asks for the manager spot. Honestly, they really do need a manager to handle the squad logistics and training records. Sophie says she will consider it, but she has to leave to check on her sister after that recent noble drama. Bridge, let's pause here, because Julian turns around and finds Julia looking absolutely furious. He asks about the stalker, and the girl says he is blocked, but Julian is still worried. Clearly, she is worried and starts to say something, but then Sophie comes sprinting back, shouting Julian's name. While Julia thinks he is jealous, Julian is in a full panic. He starts apologizing nonstop, but Sophie clarifies that Julian is not the actual problem here. It is the town square gossip, a scroll titled 10 Reasons Why Spectre is a Cheating Mage. Some anonymous coward is spreading hate, claiming he used illegal charms to strike after a 180-degree turn. Slowly, these lies were becoming facts in the community and reaching all of his friends. But Julia still cannot wrap her head around it. In her innocence, the poor girl has no idea what these forbidden cheating spells are. She asks if it is like when scholars use forbidden scrolls to break into royal libraries. The blonde explains they are talking about forbidden auto-aim charms that do all the work for you, granting the user 100% accuracy with just a single magical touch. With pure innocence, the girl actually gets excited and says she wants to use it too. However, Sophie makes sure to explain the strict laws against cheating in formal duels. Finally, Julia gets it and asks if the hero was caught, but Sophie laughs it off because she is sure that Julian is the definition of a naturally gifted prodigy. Julian starts scrolling through all the nasty messages on her enchanted mirror. Sophie is the one who gets angry. Fed up with the jealousy of others, she vows to fix this for the guild's honor. Bridge, so what do you and I make of this? As the self-proclaimed queen of gossip, Julia insists that rash moves only make things worse. Stick with me. It is only natural to worry about Arthur's situation. Back to the point, Silas asks if the boy is fine. He says he is not too worried, but a bit embarrassed they are talking about him. However, there is nothing to fear since he was not using dark charms. Still, the blonde knight thinks this could ruin others like Seraphina or the house. Then, Arthur thinks it is wild how many people are whispering about him. Out of nowhere, he spots something and nudges the knight to look. Arthur's hands are shaking while clutching his scrying glass, and it clicks when one of the hateful comments looks like it is from Lady Julia. Not long after, in a private chamber, an intense noblewoman connects with them. She straight up asks if the gossip says the protagonist does not use magic. Silas jumps in saying Arthur is just naturally talented at swordplay. In that moment, she gives off a dark vibe. You and I can see the boys feel pretty uneasy. But then, revealing herself as Seraphina, the herald says it is a golden chance, which blows their minds. Since yesterday, rumors about the knight using forbidden sorcery have been flying everywhere. In the recorded exhibition, after watching it many times, everyone agreed there was cheating. With that consensus, a whole community of commoners joined the hunt. So Seraphina decides to help the protagonist clear things up. To do that, they need to visit her training hall. But since Arthur is still confused, Seraphina asks if he wants the truth revealed. Silas jumps in for him, saying they need to squash this gossip at the source. And how is he going to do that? By showing he can duel without forbidden talismans. Obviously, for the herald, Arthur's skill will speak for itself to the blonde's excitement. He gets to join in. Still, our hero is stressing that he can't. At first, his friends are curious about his meaning. But Arthur yells he won't explain a thing and flees the room. You and I can see he is reaching a breaking point, leaving the others in total shock. That night at home before crashing, the hero thinks he needs to explain, but he cannot. And when he grabs his scrying glass, he sees a message. Seraphina says he does not have to show up, but insists he cannot let this insult to his honor slide. Arthur, on the flip side, thinks it is better to let it go because he doubts it will matter. But when he shuts his eyes, the words about being a cheater echo again. All those nasty words calling the protagonist a loser and hurling hate feel way too real, and the anxiety in his chest made sleeping a struggle. Unfortunately, the next day his assumption was totally off because while strolling through the academy, everyone was buzzing about the cheating rumor. Some said knights like him should be exiled while others were laughing and calling him a fraud for being treated like someone important by Julia. His name kept popping up, and for Arthur, it was definitely worse than proving himself live. On the walk home, the player's sister questions the news. Apparently, Sybil wanted her to spy on the protagonist to get the scoop. And since the girl got annoyed, she was told her gold would be cut if she did not follow her older sister's orders. In the background, Julia walks with a tired look, thinking the weekend is ages away until she bumps into Silas. Of course, she does her best to hide that exhausted face and greets the blonde knight as cheerfully as she can. Julia asks if he wants to catch a play on Saturday, but as usual, he declines, saying he has plans. She asks if he is free on Sunday, but Silas says he has nothing to watch and cannot play because his sister is sick. Julia gets annoyed by the second rejection, but reminds him there is something she needs to ask. He wants to know something, but the girl rushes him off and calls Arthur over. This makes the protagonist realize he is a pawn and start to feel anxious. Silas is worried about the hero's state, so he mentions that Arthur has not been able to rest. With all these issues, the blonde knight does not know where to start. In training room 6, some squires are venting about a rigged duel. But what everyone is really talking about is the star of the Herald's Scrolls probably being at this very academy. A girl asks who it is. Then the boy spills that it is the one and only Julia, the beauty. Because both her name and the academy popped up in the leaked data. The question was why she was targeted again, but apparently it was for seducing lords to boost her ranking. The message left for the flower of the court, which was her nickname, spilled the tea on her first duel with this man. You and I are about to see how they started training together, and, as time flew by, they got super close. All right, you and I are diving into a world of betrayal and elite magic. He was a high mage, while Julian was just a lowly squire, constantly whining about her lack of power. Falling for her charms, the poor guy boosted her until she reached the second rank of mastery. Then they arranged to meet and celebrate. But right before that, Julian blocked his magic messages and vanished into thin air. A while later, the knight finally tracked her down. But to his shock, she already had a noble boyfriend by her side. To warn others, her secret identity was leaked to the kingdom. Naturally, this scandal sparked massive outrage over Julian's cold betrayal of the man who helped her. Even with her beautiful face, the entire academy agreed she was a serpent at heart. So when a student named Helena entered the hall, they quickly cornered her for answers. They shared the whole story, leaving her stunned, especially when she realized the villain was the Julian she knew from childhood. Since Helena grew up with her, they asked about her true nature. Acting hesitant, she apologized, saying it is not right to speak ill of those who are not present. With Silas always watching nearby, the students whispered that he might be her next victim. Even though Helena insisted the lady would never do anything wicked, the rumors were already set in stone. As she turned away, that sad look completely vanished because she had already poisoned everyone's minds without even lifting a finger. Later, Silas mentioned that Julian said to find the spellcaster first, since he would be arriving late. The hero understood, though his expression showed he was still stinging from the public's harsh words. They waited for the spellcaster to arrive, until a glowing magic sigil suddenly flickered in the air. It said he was heading to the washing chambers, leaving our hero all alone to greet the newcomer. Now pay attention, because we are about to see if this legend lives up to the hype. Moments later, his magic mirror buzzed saying the guest had arrived. Arthur looked around, trying to find the mysterious spellcaster. He could be the bearded warrior to his right or the foreign traveler to his left. Or maybe he was just passing through. Arthur thought he should do something to be noticed. While he was lost in thought, someone asked if he was speaking to Aegis or the 𝒂𝒏𝒕. It turns out this stunning noble, standing before him, was the legendary player known as the spellcaster. The protagonist nearly fainted from the shock before he could even speak. Hearing them use those strange titles made several people nearby laugh at them. They were not exactly wrong, since those were just titles from their magic duels. Switching gears, Arthur did not expect someone so composed to have such a deep voice. Honestly, he never imagined the spellcaster would be this handsome. Later, while some feast was being prepared, they mentioned the young mage was 21 and studying at the Great Library. Arthur could not stop thinking about how impressive he looked, but then Silas asked why he was much friendlier in the duels than in person, making the mage freeze. He tried to apologize for his behavior, claiming it was his first time meeting his magic comrades, and he started acting like his online persona, but it felt incredibly awkward. The guy admitted that having no real friends, He did not know how to handle this social atmosphere because, in the real world, you and I saw that coming, right? This cool guy is actually just a big softy. He was quiet in person, but in the magic realm, he was a total chatterbox with zero fears. They asked if he still wanted to join their squad. He agreed, wanting to repay them and the commander who saved him from his lonely days. But first, he warned that he needed to observe Arthur closely to see if he was truly using forbidden arts. In the arena, a one-on-one duel with 10 rounds was about to begin. Even though the protagonist was shy, the spellcaster was not much different. Despite his hands shaking, he played his role as a mocking challenger. Then Silas checked for forbidden arts to see what would happen and declared the start of the duel. Right from the start, the spellcaster channeled his power and charged to see if his comrade was truly gifted. But just as he began his taunts, he was struck right in the head by a spell, cutting him off and forcing him to his knees. The spellcaster, who had dueled legends in the high ranks, had never faced such an insane level of raw power. After the duel ends, the atmosphere turns heavy and our main hero is starting to panic. Suddenly, the spellcaster stands up, accusing him of cheating and demanding they swap their magic crystals. Silas tries to calm them down, but another knight jumps in, saying there was no time to prepare forbidden arts. He tells the mage to recognize real talent. The boys are completely baffled by this stranger. Silas explains it is Lord Kyne, but that only makes things more confusing for them. Lord Kyne notices the spellcaster acting strange, so the blonde reveals that the young mage is actually very shy. Now speaking with Arthur, the elite ranker is thrilled by the skills he just saw, while the hero is still processing the chaos. He introduces himself by his true name, which makes Lord Kyne demand a one-on-one duel as well. The spellcaster is ready to flee from his seat, but what really shocks Arthur is seeing the team knight, for some reason, bursting into tears. And we're done. The Lord is now worried he'll be blamed for the knight's tears. Alistair's words cut deep, admitting he feels guilty for not knowing why Julian hides his true skills from the kingdom. Let's see if Julian can handle this pressure alongside us, as the others stay, just as baffled by his silence. Only a month ago, he could barely speak his mind, but his growth has been truly impressive since then. Alistair suggests a visual projection of his hands to prove he's not cheating, but Kaelin laughs, knowing the accusers won't believe it. Still, guilt weighs on Alistair, especially seeing the commoners trashing Lord Silas's reputation over the forbidden magic rumors. Surprisingly, Julian was clueless about the chaos he caused when he first sparked those rumors about the nobleman's magic. Sebastian calls our main hero the biggest victim in this mess. But Alistair notes everyone is under fire. Julian tries to confirm it while Kaelin looks away, and Sebastian says it's fine. Regarding the squad they're building, Alistair asks if it's for the grand tournament, as that's where the real crowds gather. He won't join unless Julian publicly retracts the lies he spread about the nobleman's skill first. Pay attention here, because this is where his inner struggle gets real as he panics about performing for the kingdom. Seeing his friends suffer makes him incredibly sad, but his dark thoughts are cut short when a loud bark nearly faints him. The fierce barker, just a tiny pup, turns out its owner is Lady Julia, who's out for a late evening walk. Even though Rosie is only 9, she's still a little terror to everyone. She asks why Julian isn't with Sebastian and senses his gloom, noting he's usually much more energetic than he is now. Julian admits people are suffering because of him, but he's still terrified of being judged by the High Lords. Lady Julia warns that hiding only makes things worse, mirroring exactly what Lord Silas had told him earlier that day. To cheer him up, she shows him the hateful letters she's been receiving from the Academy girls group. Since Julian wasn't in their circle, she had to invite him first. She asks if he really thinks the rumors are true. Even if they both know it's a lie, she knows the public won't listen to any logic right now. Julia mentions she's always been the target of nasty gossip despite doing nothing wrong, like that one day a girl dumped her suitor just because he preferred her. It wasn't her fault. This time, She explains the rumors are targeting poor Sebastian as well in their academy. The funniest part, that blonde girl has never even faced her in a single ranked magical duel before. Normally, Julia ignores the drama, but Sebastian truly loves the arts and dreams of being a knight, to save his future. Watch closely as Julia takes charge. It's a move we didn't see coming, as she vows to clear the air. This leaves him thinking, until the scene shifts to a magical screen, starting a public scrying for the people. As Lord Silas begins the broadcast, a magical conduit being reset from scratch appears on the glowing display. At first, the audience is curious, asking if there will be a gold giveaway during today's magical ritual. With the tension rising, the crowd demands an explanation, some roasting Silas for sheltering a magic cheater in his house. The nervous mob is throwing insults as expected, until the purification ritual finally finishes live in front of them. And Silas can finally flash a grin at his followers. With the conduit restored, he starts the divine arts ritual. Some think he bought a new magical staff and is doing a reveal. Silas breaks the silence and starts spilling tea. Since the tourney, everyone has been talking about a certain warrior, accused of using forbidden magic right in front of the whole squad. Silas kept quiet to protect the boys' privacy. But these lies have caused chaos, not just among the local knights, but across the entire kingdom of men. So, the accused warrior asked for this chance to clear his name once, and for all today. As they saw, the projection showed the conduit being built from scratch, with no forbidden runes added to the ritual. Silas claims this is the perfect moment to kill those nasty lies for good. Without wasting time, the warrior is welcomed. Julian remembers Julia's advice, preparing to silence the haters with his pure skills. Just like that, Zephyr is invited and shows up, shaking and wearing a mask that sends the viewers into a frenzy. Before they begin, Silas asks the boy to introduce himself to the entire kingdom. And the youth does, leaving everyone shocked by his young age. Julian reveals he's only 16, earning Silas's deep respect. From the exhausted look on the boy's face, it's clear the rumors have been a total living nightmare. Julian confirms this, shaking as he admits he's been having terrible dreams every single night. What a heavy moment for us to witness. This kid has been through hell, suffering from these intense panic attacks. He tells him to stay calm, which makes the boy blush. But he is fired up to show his worth. Julian says he switched styles because he wants no blood on his hands. Trust me, you and I are about to see a masterclass in pure skill. Cedric the Herald vows to support him during the trial. To prove this is happening now, Cedric shows a decree of the day's royal news. He asks the boy to step into the arena where they just installed the new training relic. Without hesitation, Julian steps up and silently thanks Sir Arthur. Plus, he thanks the golden-haired knight for believing in his honor. As he readies his weapon, we hear of his prestige in distant lands, a true master and already at grandmaster rank. And Cedric quickly mentions, a ranked duel is about to kick off. To their shock, when the match pulls, they see 3 legendary champions on the enemy team. But the boy says he's all good, and this chill energy has the entire crowd buzzing with curiosity. Entering the fray, he asks to be the archer, and no one complains, especially since his team is full of fans. With his bow ready, he gears up while the enemy Alistair says he's hyped to see this trial live. Another knight steps up to test his class, and Alistair warns everyone to watch closely. If he's using dark magic, this trial will be his ultimate ruin. Now pay attention, this move is genius. As the duel starts, all eyes are on Julian in the open field. A heavy knight claims he will lead the charge because he can take hits, but Julian leaps over a building to find a better vantage point. As an archer, he locks onto his mark and adjusts his aim with impossible speed to land the perfect killing blow. Even though he gets hit, the enemies still have no idea where the arrows came from. He reloads with grace, leaving room for another shot, which makes both Sir Arthur and Cedric beam with absolute pride. Unlike Silas, who watches the display with a look of disgust, after that shot, the the crowd's vibe turns from mockery to pure awe. Alestair cannot believe he was defeated without sorcery. Stunned, he decides to check the combat record. But this leaves him shaken, because it's obvious it was pure skill as the hero struck his head and every other vital part. He basically hit in a perfect circle, which earned him the title of a true psychopath. Dark charms usually target only the heart or head. Julian did this on purpose just to flex his dominance. While that foe reels, another is cut down, and a girl named Alara is totally impressed. You and I both know that feeling when you're watching a legend being born. The hype spreads through the kingdom like wildfire. At first, Julian seemed like a complete pretender when he first arrived at court. But now he is way cooler. All the insults are replaced by compliments, from simple praise to fancy gifts. After showing off his skills, Julian sets down his bow and asks if they've seen enough, and the whole crowd is going wild. Cedric jumps in to say yes, more than enough. As you can see, the boy's stats match the greatest heroes. He held the edge even against the elite. After proving himself, the High Council reviewed the combat records and confirmed they found zero trace of any cheating charms. In the end, Julian's just a boy who loves the fight, so he asks the kingdom to stop the rumors. Cedric can barely hold back his tears seeing his pure heart. Lady Curie feels pride, and there is no one left to insult him anymore. Julian reflects on Cedric's support and feels warmth in his heart. That night, the two share a moment, and Cedric promises to buy him a drink when he's older. Since the boy mentioned using an old weapon, he also received a new master-crafted blade as a gift, which the knight made sure he took, especially since it was just gathering dust. Suddenly, a person asks what the hero is doing there. This catches both their attention, especially since it's a noble girl they've never seen before. Even though they don't know her, that doesn't stop Cedric from thinking she's incredibly cute. Then, as she introduces herself as the hero's own sister, Cedric explains the situation with great chivalry, making the sister grateful since he gave Julian a gift. The next day, the rumors flip to praise. As everyone chants his name, Julian is shaking so much it worries his friends. Especially since his face is turning bright red. All the attention makes him anxious, but in a good way. Anyway, Arthur remembers Curie has stuff to sort out, but by her sharp expression, everything seems fine. Later, now that Cedric is on the team, the group chats about needing 2 more warriors for their party. And that's where we leave it. Arthur might even take the support role himself. All right, you and I are about to see Julian, our lead knight, search for a flanker and a strong support. While Sarah crossed Clara off the list, a girl suddenly appeared in the background, happily calling out to Julian. She said it was a pleasure meeting. Since she had known Sarah for years, it made sense to think Julian was the legendary ghost knight. The boys act clueless, totally confused by this random girl. Clara is mostly worried the girl might have a crush on Arthur instead. But Julian is reeling. He is shocked that anyone knows his secret identity. He racks his brain, trying to figure out who this mysterious person could actually be. Clara's suspicious glare clashes with the proud, beaming face of this unknown girl. As Clara gets worked up, Sarah has to stop her from doing anything reckless. The other girl just finds it odd how everyone is acting so strangely. Anyway, our hero asks who she is, but the girl just tells him to guess. She hints they have met once in the grand arena before. Nothing comes to mind, but Arthur asks if she could be the famous Beatrice from the guild. That is the right answer. The boys ask if she is a senior at the academy, and she happily confirms it was a pleasure. A few seconds later, Arthur finally connects the dots, remembering her avatar, Beatrice from the second squad. Pay attention here, because he quickly asks how she uncovered his hidden identity. The girl explains that since she knew the others, and Xander kept calling Julian a total legend, it was easy to put the pieces together. Honestly, Beatrice says she knew for ages. She saw them at the local training hall chatting about bringing a young mage into their inner circle. Julian asks why she showed up, and the girl simply says she wanted to say hello. To introduce themselves, she says she is Davin Park, and Julian does the same. Suddenly, Arthur practically screams her name in a panic. He asks if she has a guild for the Grand Tourney yet, because he wants her to join their crew immediately. After all, since she is a legendary knight, she must be aiming for the elite league, but Clara is not feeling that idea at all. Back in class later, 4 names are scribbled on a parchment. To wrap things up, Arthur mentions he has one more person in mind for the roster. But the biggest problem is what to call themselves. That is until Clara pops up in front of his desk, grabs the quill, and suddenly writes her own player name right under Beatrice's. Sarah begs her to erase it. But nearly in tears, the girl insists she must join the squad. She is fine being just a manager, but she is annoyed they invited another girl and not her. Sarah did not realize how much she wanted in, so he explains the heavy burdens of being a pro. Since she decided to commit to being manager, he figured it was fine to add her name. Arthur asks if she wants the job, and without a second thought, Clara tackles the blonde knight as a thank you. In the end, this made them both happy. Even if for totally different reasons. You and I both saw that coming, right? Later, in a private group, everyone is saying hello. The young mage starts things off by saying he loves Julian and will support only him. Finally, Arthur tells them that besides not having a full team, they lack patrons. But he promises he knows how to find some gold to enter the first league. Back at the elite players' manor, one knight in particular is feeling pretty down. Lord Marcus is bummed thinking that the ghost knight joined another squad after saying he would not. The crew gets Lord J's side, especially since Julian said he was not interested in going pro. One of them says he will offer the spot again. Time flies until late afternoon, and the protagonist is scrolling through Arthur's messages. Everyone in the group seems hyped about the team's future and plans to train tonight. Julian feels really good about finally having a squad of his own. But as he is almost home, Marcus shows up, calling him by his nickname. As the protagonist turns around, their eyes meet. Julian does not know the man's face yet, but Marcus can tell he found the right guy. Our hero recognizes something familiar in the voice. And having seen a similar fighter on the elite team, he finally connects the armor in-game with the real man, realizing it is Marcus. Even so, the hero does not know why he is here, since the guy keeps staring at a portrait on his phone. Julian asks if the boy lives nearby, but he says no. He is only there to ask for a favor. The natural response is to ask what it is, but the boy never expected to be invited to join Marcus's elite team. On a beachside map, pink energy gathers in an enemy's hand, and from his high spot, he seems to be hunting for some new victims. Beatrice is hiding in a corner, and beside her is the mage ready to roll. Then, as the tank knight activates his true form and charges in, the attacker covers them with a flurry of shots, finishing it with one hit. You and I just witnessed the birth of a legend. Stick with me. We're about to see if Dorian survives this sudden ambush. But this fool meets a darker end, as Duke Dorian snipes him from the high tower without any mercy. With another victory, Silas praises the squad for fighting like pros. Beatrice even gives Eldon a playful head pat for being their shield, praising his great effort. The girl is hyped, while Eldon's face turns red as a royal banner. He stammers about being older than her, but she simply doesn't care. Shifting focus, Silas grows quiet as he notices Dorian looks troubled. Being his longtime comrade, the blonde knight prepares to ask about this behavior that is way more distracted than usual. Then the hero apologizes if he ruined their formation, promising to fight better, but Silas insists Dorian is doing great, though his words don't change a thing. By the way, the blonde remembers Julian mentioning the hero, saying he sounded like a rejected suitor. After some thought, our hero spills the tea, leaving his friend absolutely stunned by the whole story. Now pay attention here. It makes total sense for Dorian to be their top recruit, and Silas is mind blown when he realizes something else. He shakes him, knowing Dorian could be a legend, but he shows zero regret. This shocks Silas because Dorian chose their ragtag crew instead, which fires up his resolve to be the absolute best. even though deep down, the hero still felt guilty for turning down Lord Milton's offer. Flashback to that meeting where he was offered a spot on the grand stage. Dorian was super confused. First, Julian hit him with a proposal, and now Milton was trying to recruit him too. His firm rejection made it clear he wasn't joining, catching the elite knight completely off guard. When Dorian got no reply, he tried to wake Milton up. But the man was lost in thought after being rejected on the spot. Milton assumed the hero turned down Neville because it was too sudden and he didn't know much about the knightly world. But since he joined a guild, he surely knew the knightly path. Since he lost that chance, Milton offered a chest of gold instead. When asked, the hero said he only knew a little about their house, including that Sir Eustace is an agile beast. He knows Eustace is a newcomer who adapts like a true champion. He also knows Neville, the legendary support who can master any position. You and I both know rank 1 is huge, and Milton warns Dorian that he holds that legendary title in all the land, a fact the hero didn't even know. He used this status to prove their strength. Plus, they had an estate and massive rewards. Despite the perks, Dorian showed new resolve. Back to the refusal, the noble asked if his team was just friends. Dorian confirmed, and Milton laughed at their amateur vibe. Even though setting goals with friends can be exciting. He claimed they'd never be legends. Realizing Dorian wouldn't budge, Milton dropped it. But if his goal was the throne, he'd surely regret this moment. With those harsh words, he vanished, leaving the hero with a chill. Moments later, while waiting by the Great Hall, Seraphina was daydreaming of a feast. Plus, she needed to find Milton because she wanted to reschedule the council meeting, and he had completely ghosted her. Just then, the man appeared, apologizing and giving her a fright. Milton quickly explained his whereabouts, which surprised her even more. She worried about pushing her sister. She asked if he found him with just the sketch, and if he succeeded. Milton said they should look for someone else. He explained that even if Dorian accepted, it would ruin their team balance since he isn't ready yet. By next morning, Silas was deep in thought. While the hero drank coffee, Beatrice stayed silent. She asked why they only had 4 members when they needed 5. Dorian was also deep in thought. Silas warned he wanted to discuss this further, especially since they had several candidates in mind, and he already knew who to choose. Heading to the knight's headquarters, Neville asked if he heard right. So what do you and I take from this? Seraphina is searching for one last night, while Julian freaks out because Milton is acting far too chill about everything. All right, you and I are about to see if a legendary healer can save this squad. Dorian wonders why Marcus won't just recruit him, but the leader is staying totally silent. Anyway, Marcus keeps insisting it's better to move on and build a way stronger 5-man team. Silas liked that plan and started talking about a specific support mage he recommends. Silas explained that Benedict played with her before, the legendary high-tier support known as Yulia. Benedict remembered her nickname instantly. He thought she'd be a solid pickup for the team. Even our hero, Dorian, liked the idea of seeing how a pro like Yulia actually plays. Before we move on, Silas first warned them that Yulia lives in a completely different city. At the Royal Academy, students were walking through the halls gossiping about the latest news. Everyone was talking about Felix, or the Soul Harvester, being an absolute god in the combat arena. Benedict was getting incredibly annoyed, kicking everything in sight as his frustration boiled over. He ranted that Dorian isn't special, calling his peers clueless and threatening to crush them all. Now, pay attention here. This rival's ego is about to become a major problem for everyone. He was fuming because even after he won, people wouldn't stop hyping Dorian up. However, his anger faded when he noticed several urgent messages popping up on his phone. He had to answer the call immediately, even though he usually hates being contacted like this. His contact, Lord 𝒕𝒏𝒕, claimed to have news, but Benedict shot back that he'd already seen the Morningstar recruitment notice. Later on, Caspian asked if it was true they were bringing Yulia onto the squad. When Silas confirmed it, the boy mentioned he'd actually played a few matches with her. Silas thought it would be smart to start a trial match right away to test her. Sophia figured out from her sister's secret info why Julian was so incredibly angry with Marcus. Her sister kept talking, but insisted she wouldn't keep acting like a common spy. She hung up just as a girl rushed past and slammed right into Sophia, knocking her down. Miranda was the one responsible, standing there and staring down at her without an apology. But then the blonde flopped onto the ground and started whining, acting totally bizarre and dramatic. Let's pause. Did you see that shift? This girl is definitely not as sweet as she looks. Dorian felt a chill because, unlike the rumors, she didn't seem nice at all. Benedict offered a friendly greeting, but Yulia didn't even give him a single response. Dorian found her more and more creepy until, quite suddenly and without warning, the girl flashed a sweet smile, completely flipping all of Dorian's dark expectations. She thanked them for the invite and mentioned she's had some recent struggles. Silas called her a key player, and Yulia praised his famous Aegis shield technique. They kept chatting in a friendly way, making Dorian remember the good times he shared with Nathaniel during their legendary matches. But when she caught Dorian's gaze, she flashed a smile that felt genuinely intimidating. The round started with glacial mist, a chilling enchantment that freezes the area, perfect for a support. Her terrifying expression during the cast left Caspian shaking in fear behind Benedict. The warrior lunged toward Dorian, who ducked, before she suddenly switched back to a kind leader. Behind their team's strongest shield, which was Caspian, the vanguards began their steady advance. An enemy solo player rushed in to take out their tank, but Caspian held firm as the squad rallied. Suddenly, Yulia noticed a strange and suspicious movement coming from a nearby corner. She quickly warned the crew, shouting a heads-up for Dorian to aim his strike toward the left corner immediately. After a quick search, she spotted a sneaky enemy lurking behind a crumbled stone wall. With lightning precision, Dorian fired a shot that nailed the enemy right in their weak spot. Yulia beamed and praised his skills. Trust me, you and I just saw a legendary duo born. But then, Caspian started struggling as his transformation faded away. She weaves a restoration spell that returns him to full strength instantly. While she isn't Nathaniel, she certainly holds her own. Suddenly, Lord Sterling takes several heavy hits, and Lady Yasmine simply commands him to fall back. Lady Beatrice targets an archer high above, but her aim falters. Instead of insults, Yasmine offers encouragement, saying she will definitely find her mark next time. Trust me, the whole team is now under Yasmine's spell. After the match, they beg her to join the household guard, and she accepts. Sir Sebastian rambles about glory, then realizes it is unnecessary. He heads off to celebrate, while Lady Yasmine offers our main hero a graceful wave. When asked about a name for the order, Lord Sterling suggests the title he prepared. Without hesitation, he presents his best idea. Back at the academy, Lady Helena acts strangely in the halls, leaving Lady Seraphina's sister completely baffled by her behavior. To her, it seemed the girl merely mimicked her own stumble and collapsed right after. However, the onlookers didn't witness the act, rushing to help with concern. Out of habit, she begins to apologize, but Lady Julia intervenes. Julia insists there is no reason for an apology when the girl was clearly the one who fell. Even while being polite, Millicent cannot hide her annoyance. Naturally, her sycophantic friends back up the blonde lady's false story. But Julia saw everything and caught Millicent throwing herself onto Bernadette. She asks why the blonde fell too, catching Sir Winston completely off guard. Now pay attention. This is the moment where the tension hits its peak while everyone waits for an answer. She approaches with a sweet smile, asking if the girl is all right, but Julia clarifies her vision is absolutely perfect. No issues here. Changing tactics, Millicent notes it has been a long time and asks how she is. Julia is surprised enough to look away, embarrassed. She shakes her head, confused, showing she has no memory of Millicent despite being former classmates. Julia truly doesn't seem to care, but politely says it is pleasant to see her once again. Even the blonde's allies are mesmerized by Julia's aura. Then, Millicent's true mask slips, and her inner fury begins to boil over. Bernadette struggles to find words while cornered. Seeing someone defend her like that, she begins to truly admire Lady Julia. Back in the schoolroom, Julia hears of this Yasmine who secured the final position on the squad. Wanting more practice as a group, Sir Sebastian requests a mock duel. As manager, Julia steps in to help without a second thought. As they part ways, Sebastian asks when the training schedule will be finalized. I know what you're thinking, she's fine, right? Well, Julia's panicking because Sterling gave her orders she cannot understand. The blonde mentioned arranging a joust, but Julia has no idea that it actually means a practice match. Worst of all, she cannot ask Sterling since she is the manager. Just as she panics, Bernadette arrives with a small gift. She explains it is a token of gratitude for the other day, leaving Julia completely stunned by the kind gesture. She doesn't even recall helping Bernadette with anything. Of course, this causes Bernadette's joyful expression to crumble into a scream. She shouts about the time she fell and was rescued, but Julia dismisses it. The girl insists she is fine despite her injured hands. She spots Julia's parchment with the search term visible and asks about the word joust. Julia panics and tells her not to look at her notes, but Bernadette wonders if it involves the Crown's League. This gives Julia a sudden spark of inspiration. Without wasting a moment, she grabs Bernadette's arm and pulls her along. Bernadette follows, fearing she made a mistake, and feels anxious when Julia finally begins to speak. But she only asks if Bernadette knows the meaning of a joust. Hearing it is a casual duel, Julia's worried face glows. Later, Bernadette explains these duels happen before major tournaments. She suggests searching for the specific term in the royal archives. Finally, Julia finds the definition of a scrimmage within the informal scrolls. Bernadette says she has never competed, but she understands the terminology. Without revealing Serafina's name, Julia asks how to make this happen. Bernadette reveals she is a team manager, which links her to Lord Dorian. Regardless, Julia is determined to resolve this, so Bernadette is fully committed. She decides to provide whatever assistance is needed. Julia asks how they will manage it, but Bernadette explains her friend is also a manager, and they exchange letters. Back home, reality shatters her hopes. Bernadette begs her sister for assistance multiple times, wanting to know how to organize a formal practice duel. But Lady Serafina refuses to listen, especially since Bernadette previously dismissed her while they were discussing the matter. And that's where we leave it. You and I will have to wait to see if she ever gets that help. All right, you and I are diving into a world of noble secrets. Serafina finds it strange that Beatrice is asking for combat tips when she is not even a knight. Out of pure curiosity, Serafina agrees to help. She explains that if they want to get better, they need a community of warriors first. She warns that information is power and points out several message scrolls. One specific scroll is dedicated entirely to the legendary Lord Dorian. Beatrice is stunned to find Dorian featured as the main story on the guild board. It explains you can book a duel by sending a formal invite, or just keep it casual by coordinating with fellow knights. But Serafina insists there is a superior way, using a high-level magic link called Conquest. Beatrice has no clue what that is and finds the name odd. Her sister explains it links knights via voice stones, but she is just more confused. So Serafina clarifies that this magic link is far more efficient for tactical commands. Within these circles, hundreds of knights are discussing upcoming duels. One dedicated chamber even has over 200 warriors connected at once. Serafina notes that orders looking for a fight are usually very bold and proactive. Now watch this part closely. She tells Beatrice to just set a date and wait, or simply send a private carrier pigeon to the fighters. With the plan set, Serafina offers to invite her to the noble circle, but Beatrice is not paying attention. Beatrice says she is not interested, realizing her mistake a second too late. Serafina might realize this is about Dorian, the champion of the rival Silver Aegis team. Serafina is the one winning here since she gets to watch them train, though she is still trembling while keeping the secret. Beatrice simply asks to join the noble guild. The next day, Juliet is on cloud 9 because her problems are solved. She thanks Beatrice, who promises to help again later. You saw that too, right? Beatrice acts like a secret double agent, claiming some mysterious friend did all the work. After some thought, Juliet offers Beatrice a position as lead strategist. Beatrice will handle the duel schedules, while Juliet manages the rest of the squires. After all, it is much easier to manage the knights when they have 2 leaders. Juliet is thrilled because she wants to learn from her friend. To seal the deal, she puts on her most charming face, pinning Beatrice against the wall as those big baby eyes shine brighter and brighter. It reaches a point where the poor girl can only say yes with a nervous grin. Later, in the academy's training fields, the girls run into the young knights of the team. Juliet jumps in to introduce the new strategist she hired. She claims it is because she has massive influence, which, honestly, is true. But Beatrice is still shaking with nerves as she introduces herself. Sebastian is a bit lost, wondering who the main hero is. The blonde knight also joins in and introduces himself to Beatrice, who is totally spaced out. Giving her the details on the squad, the blonde warns her they plan to become royal knights soon. He mentions he is the main defender, introduces Dorian as the heavy hitter, and presents Juliet as the manager. Their goal is to enter the official royal tournament as a professional knightly order. For a moment, Beatrice is starstruck until the weight of that goal hits her. She officially introduces herself as the duel scheduler. Seconds after her introduction, the girl tells our hero something he clearly did not know yet. But honestly, all he can think about is how his sister would lose her mind if she found out he joined Dorian's team. Meanwhile, Sebastian asks for Beatrice's identification so they can spar together in the training realm later, but she has nothing. Anyway, at some point later, a magic stone recharge is completed. Out of the 3 people involved, only Juliet seems excited. Juliet asks the hero how he feels walking with 2 beauties. Sebastian could not make it, while Beatrice wonders who the second beauty is. Still, they have to help the new strategist set up an account, and ironically, this task falls on Dorian, who ends up in the wrong magical realm because he is also clueless. Juliet finds the whole thing hilarious, but she gets serious about a major problem. Heading to the mansion, Sebastian asks if his sister needs anything. Even though they live in the same estate, he tells her to send word since he will be busy training with his team. But after the blonde knight leaves, his sister grabs a book and starts mumbling complaints while she reads. When everyone enters the training realm via a magic invite, Juliet is the first to speak, saying she wants custom armor. Next up is Beatrice, whose code name is Little Sprout. Her appearance looks different, and her entire character has been magically reimagined. When she meets Juliet, she is stunned by how elegant her character looks, but Juliet says the same. This was the perfect moment for the young lady to brag about how much gold she spent. But she stops boasting because Beatrice's movement is too distracting. The second strategist yells that her vision is spinning out of control. And that's where we leave her. Trust me, you and I are going to enjoy watching this amateur learn the ropes. All right, you and I are about to watch a total newbie try to master the kingdom's most complex game. Since the keys are familiar, she warns Beatrice to keep her hand steady on the WD set and always keep her pinky on the shift key. To fix the spinning view, Julia explains how to adjust the artifact sensitivity using the scroll button. After just a few moments of training, Beatrice is already showing some seriously impressive skills. She's still struggling, but she's getting the hang of it just as 2 other team members arrive. Julia calls them into the voice link, and Benedict boasts loudly that he basically carried the entire team in the last match. This sparks a petty argument while everyone chats about the grand rankings, leaving Beatrice feeling quite ignored. Anxiety starts to kick in, but Dorian saves the day by placing a communications headset over her ears. As Beatrice adjusts her gear, Benedict keeps teasing the young mage, until he snaps and delivers a perfect flying kick. Benedict has zero regrets, though. Bothering the kid is just way too much fun for him. Benedict spots a brand new face, and the manager introduces herself while Benedict immediately calls the young mage a total creep. Now pay attention, because this next part is huge. We're about to find out that this girl knows way more about the game than she lets on. The young mage simply cannot wrap his head around that. Benedict explains that some people are just masters of pure theory. As Lady Sue joins the warm-up, Julia suggests that Beatrice should just watch for now. The scout isn't here yet, but they're already searching for their next match. Beatrice loves hearing everyone through the headset. For the next round, our hero suggests they go for a 3-on-3 duel. Beatrice starts daydreaming about playing with friends both near and far, and honestly, she is totally vibing with the whole atmosphere. By the end, Beatrice spills all her excitement even though she was just a spectator. She remembers she has a friend to meet nearby and waves goodbye with a massive smile. The girl tracks her down, and Julia calls Dorian so they can head home together, but Dorian mentions something that instantly piques her interest. Despite being the one who called her over, he still struggles to get the actual words out. You and I saw this coming. Julia isn't exactly the patient type when it comes to keeping secrets, and she wants answers right now. She asks if Dorian saw her monitor. His silence makes it crystal clear that he definitely did. There was plenty of disrespect on that screen, likely from that suitor now that they know his nickname. Even without knowing her, students from the academy were throwing shade, saying she's just a pretty face, and Dorian feels the weight of those insults. But Julia insists he shouldn't sweat it, since they're all friends here. She tells him to cheer up, especially since she's already juggling a massive workload as their manager. She has to handle uniforms, marketing, and team motivation. She's even heard of managers making lemonade for their players, so she can't afford to get distracted. Meanwhile, Beatrice's friend asks if she got closer to Julia after that little fall. Beatrice admits that while Julia seems tough to approach, she's actually incredibly cute. She spills everything about the fun they had at the Royal Pavilion. It was her first time playing, and she loved it. Even though she wanted to keep showering her with compliments, she decided to stop there. Over at the House of Champions, two players are scratching their heads over their strategy. Milo stays quiet, but Lord Nigel insists that their current plan just isn't enough. Both Sarah and the male manager are looking quite worried about the whole situation. The girl mentions her pick is a solid damage dealer, but Nigel insists mistakes won't be tolerated. They aren't looking to train someone, they need a player who is already battle-ready. Even as the top-ranked player, Julian stuck to his guns and refused. Arthur and Eustace have never seen him act like this. The managers feel the same way, thinking it's best to continue the chat later. So they quickly change the subject and head out to hunt for some snacks. Eustace asks why only they have to go, but they roll with it anyway. Finally, once the two head out, the manager thinks it over and calls Julian for a very serious conversation. Nigel is adamant that the new team member must be absolutely top tier. The girl begs him to give the guy a shot, arguing that the Reaper isn't the only elite damage dealer around. The male manager interrupts with rumors of a debut competition in the Eastern Empire next month. Naturally, Nigel starts to lose it, while Milo stays completely serious and focused. Beatrice's sister warns that the official news will likely drop by tomorrow morning. It's a huge event, but they can't enter since it's strictly for Eastern teams. And trust me, you and I are about to witness how this entire story transforms from simple academy fun into a massive, high-stakes global battle for ultimate glory and honor that will change everything. All right, you and I will see these elite knights get seriously desperate. Lord Nam realizes there is no time to stick to his noble ideals, so he lets the head steward do whatever is needed while Minyu stays silent. Later at the Royal Academy, Sir Alistair approaches Lady Alara with a smile that could outshine the sun. It completely rattles her, especially since he burst into her lecture hall and stole everyone's attention. So naturally, she gives his shin a solid stomp with her boot. Once they are alone, she asks what the blonde knight wants, but Alistair just says he is curious about her thoughts as a legendary warrior. Lady Demi honestly admits she is not there to complain, being a top-tier cleric herself. Plus, Lady Benny gives a shout-out to the spellcaster. Now pay attention. While his movement is perfect for flanking, she hates how he often ghosts the squad. Honestly, she only worries about the blonde knight himself. He was supposed to be a primary slayer, after all. Lady Benny mocks his death count, suggesting he ditch the slayer role to become a heavy vanguard. Surprisingly, the blonde just smiles, leaving Alara confused since she expected a noble temper tantrum. She returns the honesty with a gentle pat and some encouragement, while they both agree that young Subbo still has much to learn as a junior squire. Regarding the stewards, Alara thinks they are doing a fantastic job. She originally doubted Lady Julia's worth, but now she sees the value in both her and Bonnie. By a twist of fate, they are in the same year, but Alistair barely knows Bonnie. Regardless, Alara asks a question about the hero's hidden identity. She wants to know how Bonnie reacted when the truth finally came out. In her head, she bets Bonnie fainted upon realizing her classmate is a living legend, but the blonde knight just seems to zone out completely. Alara presses for answers, and Alistair starts to sweat until he finally spills the secret she wants. Later, he thinks to himself that Bonnie surely does not care about the battle. But wait, you and I know better, especially since he remembers Lady Benny praising her for having such a keen tactical eye. Gasping for air, a desperate knight screams into the darkness. He keeps running because with his clerics dead, he must regroup with the main force, at least until he spots Xavier lurking in the shadows. The man senses a presence, but Xavier moves behind him with impossible speed. As a mere healer, he can only let out a scream before being cut down in one hit. The fallen knight's ally arrives, shouting for his friend to take the assassin out. The assassin simply does what he does best, leaving both enemy warriors to perish after being wrecked by just one man. Securing 2 easy kills makes Xavier's day, and since the main cleric is gone, he thinks the battle is won, until a message reveals 4 allies have been slaughtered. Xavier cannot believe it since he just took down 2 enemies alone. But it is true, for without communication, numbers mean nothing. Severing the link, Xavier's rage hits the ceiling and he is about to snap. Hearing a noise, he silences his orb quickly as his mother announces that dinner is ready. Once she leaves, he reopens the link and curses his teammates, making them all turn on him. An ally asks if he speaks to his mother with that mouth and demands some respect. Xavier doubles down, telling the knight who wasted his sacred art to never fight beside him again. Xavier claims his fellow knights are nothing but brainless peasants. They fire back, roasting him for his humiliation against the champion at the Grand Championship, but Xavier just tells each of them to shut it. Eventually, his allies simply stop responding, which only makes the rogue knight Xavier even more annoyed. However, one silent observer just watches his tantrum without saying a single word. After the inevitable defeat, Xavier tosses his magical focus in pure frustration, and the gems on the device pop out like a beetle's nose. Later, in a private sparring chamber, a new player enters the room. Xavier mentions his foul mood, but he is not about to dwell on his failures. The girl gets straight to the point about his progress, and he admits he has a massive trial with the Knight's Order tomorrow. To Seed, having a trial means he is already in the running, and Xavier happily agrees that he might finally become a professional royal knight. That's where we leave it. Once he joins the Order, his failures will finally vanish. All right, you and I are watching Alistair declare he will shatter his obstacles. Even in silence, Selene knows he will. Following their duel, a scroll flickers on his crystal, completely catching the young knight off guard. He checks the message, confused by the late hour. It is a harsh blow. The captain in charge of Squire Trials just cancelled his audience without a single word of explanation. Meanwhile, Sebastian was also stunned, but for a bizarre reason that made absolutely no sense at all. Instead of feeling discouraged, He felt a rush of adrenaline to fulfill the demands of a mysterious new quest. Across the capital, Julian returns from the market and asks his sister to carry the remaining supplies. She refuses to be a burden. Julian insists she worked hard today, but his sister reminds him that his own studies were just as grueling. They share a quiet moment. Honestly, she admits that scholarly pursuits aren't in their blood, but she is proud he isn't being a lazy slob. Then, his sister asks if he plans on talking to himself in his chamber every single night. Now pay attention. Julian explains he is just training with allies, though he worries about being a loud nuisance. Knowing the truth, she doesn't mind, even if his late-night training sessions are starting to outnumber his actual hours of study. Changing the subject, Julian mentions upgrading his personal Mana mirror. She asks if something is broken. Shying away, he admits the old mirror is actually fine. Since he rarely asks for favors, she simply asks for the price. Hearing this makes him incredibly relieved and happy. Before this, Silas helped with the frame, adding 8 mana shards and a borrowed viewing glass. Julian asks for 500 crowns to cover the final components. His sister is visibly shocked by that high number, considering Julian usually tries to keep things incredibly cheap. Immediately, the girl begins calculating the household bills. Seeing her stress, Julian quickly withdraws his request. That wasn't her intent at all. She promises to help once she is paid, then hands him some spare coins to go grab a hearty meal with his companions. Moving on, his sister brings up Julian's other close friend. He is always giving away spare gear, like that viewing mirror from the other day. She recalls this all started thanks to some brilliant, high-born fellow she remembers quite well. Julian realizes she must be talking about Alistair, hitting the nail right on the head. This makes him feel slightly gloomy. Meanwhile, outside the massive guild hall downtown, the very man they were discussing stands there with a look of pure, unshakable steel. A brief flashback now. Celine was furious when the interview was scrapped. It was her fierce suggestion that pushed him to visit the agency in the flesh. You and I saw this coming. He is not taking no for an answer. After a quick exchange, the boy finally knocks on the office door and waits for a reply. Entering with permission, he finds Niles waiting. An official greets him with a polite nod. He gestures for the boy to sit, asking if the hall meets his expectations. After Alistair declines a drink, the man gets straight to business. He asks if the boy wants the full details. Alistair demands to know why the trial was cancelled. Surprisingly, the official admits that the boy actually possessed every single trait they were searching for. This fires Alistair up even more, and he demands an immediate trial by combat. The man understands his rage, but he hesitates. As the captain of a legendary order, the official must first explain the high standards they require when recruiting new blood. He was once a champion himself, a fact Alistair already knew, because it was impossible to ignore the name Sir Simon Huan. Sir Simon explains that within the guild, every knight has a unique role. Some are calm, while others bring total chaos. His goal is to unite 5 of these wild spirits together. Because of this chaotic vision, he values a man's character above all else. Alistair is blindsided, but Simon insists that within any legendary squad, character is as vital as skill when forming an elite order. Still confused, Alistair asks what is wrong with his own spirit. The captain reveals he still trains daily. Though he isn't in his prime, he still holds the rank of a grandmaster. Having dueled the world's best, Simon proved his worth within the Grand Guild. Honestly, playing alongside Alistair was nothing but constant drama. To avoid more tension, he asks to end the meeting right here. Alistair isn't happy at all. Even if he gets another shot, the captain is certain it will be a waste of time. After that cold rejection, the captain asks if there are any final questions. Head bowed, Alistair accepts the verdict but requests one final trial. Suddenly, a second high-ranking captain enters the room, greeting the group with a surprising smile. A new audience is scheduled. Alistair bows deeply, thanking the captain for his precious time. So what do you and I think? He left without an outburst, which completely shocked 𝒍𝒏. "All right, you and I are about to dive into a scandal involving the noble council and Sir Julian, who were overheard by Silas while lurking in the halls." Being so far from that room, he simply could not hold back his burning rage any longer. As the warriors gather for the ritual duel, Commander Arthur reminds them that their first grand tournament begins today. With a sharp snap of his fingers, the royal tactician appears to announce they will face the House of the Golden Crust. Their knights include Sir Pepperin, Baron Barbecue, and the High Duke of Cheese. Apparently, these warriors are obsessed with meat and seasoned bread. Even though they are lower-ranked nobles, Lady Sarah is not about to underestimate their strange combat style. The first strategy is to bring Beatrice and Julian to crush the enemy vanguard as quickly as possible. The battle is split into 2 waves, and with the shields raised, the newly named House Defiance charges into the fray. Our heroes fan out across the field, while Sir Derek takes his position, focusing his inner magical energy. He spots 5 enemy knights charging straight toward the sacred objective. It was exactly what the blonde knight predicted, but as the young mage attacks, a massive barrier slams into him. Now here is the part you and I need to watch carefully. The enemy set up 2 interlocking shields. Because the commander had pushed too far ahead, he could not protect the young mage who was now desperate for healing. Against such a fortified defensive line, there was simply no way to compete with their crushing magical damage. With double shields and heavy crossbow fire, the crystal was snatched, forcing Arthur to order a quick regroup. First, he promises to cover Beatrice, ordering her to shatter that frontline defensive barrier at any cost. The lady summons a massive, enchanted repeating ballista and pulls the trigger without mercy, wrecking everything in her path. Sir Pepperin starts to feel the heat, but it is already too late because his magical shield is shattered. The enemy screams for backup, but both barriers are shattered, leaving them totally exposed since they cannot fight without their iron wall protection. Seizing the opportunity, the rogue Yummy activates his Blight Curse and hits the enemy's lead archer right away. For 10 seconds, this curse drains 5 points of life force every 2 seconds. Plus, the infected player spreads this same deadly effect to all allies standing within 3 meters of them. The archer had no choice but to retreat, which was exactly what Julian needed to cut him down easily. Things turned desperate for the Order, and in their final moments, they complain about lacking long-range support on their squad. Back in the strategy chamber, the high advisors ask the warriors how the battle experience felt to them. Arthur is ready for 3 more rounds, while the scribe mentioned that every single detail was carefully documented. You and I both saw that coming, right? For once, the lady had absolutely nothing to complain about. The young mage felt the pressure of the duel, but Beatrice tells him to just shut up and celebrate. Suddenly, a glowing message on the blonde knight's magic scroll grabs everyone's attention. The training grounds are going into maintenance, but way more importantly, a legendary hero named Sebastian suddenly joins the match. He greets everyone with a confident smirk, and the young mage is especially hyped to see him join. Sebastian's presence makes Beatrice feel a bit left out, as the newcomer asks how their training has been going. Switching gears to what he really wants to know, Sebastian asks if the rumors he heard are actually true. There was a grand announcement made, and without missing a single beat, every detail was finally laid out. Arthur remains skeptical because they are accepting applications for a massive competition happening in the Highland Kingdoms. To the team's excitement, Sebastian proudly reveals he will be the High Herald narrating the entire event. Since they are old buddies, Arthur and Julian are stoked, while the young mage is on a whole other level. Sebastian loves the thrill of the quest, especially the part where he gets to interview the legendary champions. Knowing he needs to level up his tactical knowledge, he asks Arthur and Julian for a little help. Later, the boys agree to help, and while chilling at a high-end tavern, Sebastian starts digging into his feast. He asks for some ale, but Sarah wouldn't let a minor do that. As they eat, Sarah notices Julian. He wanted to eat, But the variety of gourmet dishes was overwhelming for a simple soldier like him. It was his first time in such a noble setting, but there was something else he wasn't ready to share. We flash back to when Sebastian randomly invited the boys to dinner, because he will be the herald for the tournament. And that is where we leave it. Trust me, you're going to want to see what happens next. All right, you and I are about to dive into a dinner meeting that changes everything for our heroes. But Julian felt a bit out of place, doubting his own skill until his loyal comrades shouted that he was their most vital asset in the entire realm. With their support, he agreed to join. Next, the chronicler mentioned he wanted to recruit one more legendary figure to the table. Since it wasn't confirmed yet, he said he'd have to send word to them first. Sir Nathaniel, the first on the list, flatly rejected Bard Sterling's request without a second thought, citing duties to his order while Arthur stayed silent. So the chronicler had to move forward, announcing to his audience that he would only be dining with Julian and Lord Sebastian. Perhaps that was Sterling's true plan all along, because hearing our protagonist's name made Sir Nathaniel's heart skip a beat. During his broadcast of the Sterling Cup, he insisted on calling them. Finally, Nathaniel changed his mind and shouted Arthur's name. The boy tried to recall his many duties, but James was so persistent that Arthur eventually gave in with a few frustrated tears. Because of this, the two finally walk into the Grand Tavern for their meeting. Before reaching their spot, Sir Nathaniel starts sweating bullets from pure nerves. Now, pay attention here. Arthur jokes the Shadow Knight is just a student, and Nathaniel's nerves go straight through the roof. Anyway, a servant points out their table. Nathaniel cannot stop thinking he's finally meeting the Shadow Knight, but Julian is also feeling incredibly anxious at that very same table. Finally, Nathaniel introduces himself, and Sterling thanks him for showing up. But to his surprise, the Shadow Knight is exactly how he imagined. In fact, he felt even more familiar than expected, like a little brother. In our hero's mind, he was also quite shy about facing the two directly. With dinner served, Sterling asked if knights ever fumble during a grand duel, and they both admitted it happens. 2 winters ago, in a tense one-on-one clash, Nathaniel had successfully cornered an enemy for the final strike. He reached for his heavy crossbow, but accidentally grabbed a longbow instead, making a massive mess of the situation. Since his vision was locked in for a long-range shot, it was impossible to fight at such close quarters. Sterling is shocked because they actually won that battle, but the truth is simple. By pure luck, James dodged the attacks and finished the enemy with a close-range blade. In this way, he managed to dodge that epic fail. From Sebastian's view, it all looked perfectly planned, and Sterling was impressed since he was a top-tier damage dealer. Still, he wondered why a warrior like him became a supporter. Nathaniel simply claimed it was all about his tactical innovation. He also suggested age might be a factor, which made Sterling feel quite old and ragged in that moment. They chatted about the hottest topics in the capital until the questions ran dry. Sterling thanked everyone, though Julian felt bad for not speaking up. But before leaving, Nathaniel told the kid he already knew about his choice to join another battalion. Then the main hero returned the gesture, feeling super hyped to meet James until he felt his hand getting crushed because he wasn't the most hyped person there. Nathaniel admitted he wanted him on the squad, but Sebastian reminded him that Julian was already promised to another. Still, James just couldn't wrap his head around it. Okay, I know what you're thinking. They're scouting a beast player for the tournament. Yeah, stay sharp, things are heating up. But with their strength, Sebastian fired back that it definitely wouldn't be an easy path to victory. Meanwhile, in the grand halls of the Order, Lady Seraphina was introducing herself as she welcomed a new member to their crew. On his broadcast, Sterling announced that tournament sign-ups were closed. It seems quite a few folks missed their chance to join. Still, everyone knew the grand duel wasn't putting any strange or complex rules in place. All amateur squires are welcome, and the competition will not tolerate any form of hate or discrimination. Whether you have a noble sponsor or experience doesn't matter. Everyone must start their journey in the qualifiers. Sure, some might whine about this rule, but word is the prize is way bigger than expected. The competition will go down in taverns across the entire kingdom. Sterling warned he'd be traveling to see the action, wishing every aspiring knight the best of luck. Later, Sebastian asked Eustace if he was sure, since he'd have to travel from Eastgate and ditch his academy studies. Eustace promised everything was fine, but Sebastian still worried because his friend was such a top-tier student. The boy said he wasn't joking and mentioned he had a cousin in the capital. Still, Sebastian offered his help. It would be sweet to find a noble sponsor, but the blonde didn't feel right asking the chronicler for a favor. Anyway, the conversation switched to Sterling's duties. While they spoke, the managers were whispering about something in the background. And that's where we leave it. Stick with me, because this tournament is going to be legendary. All right, you and I are diving into a world where Alistair's words left Lord Benedict and Juliana absolutely terrified. Their fear made it obvious they had forgotten the scholars' trials. After a moment, Alistair bid his friends and Juliana farewell. True to his word, Alistair began a brutal training routine within the magical arena. He balanced his arcane scrolls with training until he nearly collapsed from exhaustion. Meanwhile, the stewards were hard at work, stitching together enchanted fabrics for a legendary new uniform. As for young Julian, he could barely sleep without magic ravens waking him with messages. Meanwhile, Lord Benedict was in hot water for skipping his noble duties as per usual. During a meeting of heralds, Sebastian noted that over 1,000 warbands are entering the qualifying melee. The stakes are limitless, and the rewards are massive. That is why over 15,000 knights are watching. This surge in scale is a double-edged sword, making it nearly impossible to track the source of the gold. Even Sebastian has no clue who is actually providing the massive funding. However, Harold Humphrey is not surprised by the mention of a shadowy royal sponsor. The backer claimed to be fully invested in the tournaments of Albion. This turned out far larger than expected, but Sebastian had zero time to waste before officially commencing the event. Meanwhile, a brand new squad of elite champions is finally gathering. Alistair vows to lead the vanguard. Sir Vincent steps up as the master archer. Young Cedric promises he will do his absolute best to heal his wounded brothers. The mage Thorn guarantees he will defend the front lines with all his might. Lastly, Dorian promises to watch their backs and crush their enemies. With the roles set, Alistair gathered the Shadow Vanguard for a thunderous war cry to boost their morale. But then Vincent mocked the hero's grand speech, which left Sir Alistair blushing in embarrassment. Alistair ignored the jab, knowing that tavern duels are the ultimate test of a knight's spirit. He was relieved that Julian was not bothered by the crowd's insults. In truth, our protagonist had not even given the hecklers a single thought. But once the realization hit him, he had to rush to the washroom. Now pay attention here, this is where things get incredibly tense. Julian's heart is pounding, and the last person he wants to see just walked in. Alexander saunters in and Julian's panic spikes, but suddenly, the brute just turns on his heel and leaves without saying a single word. The squire is left shivering in shock, completely baffled by the silent treatment. As other nobles pass by, Julian can only worry about whether Alexander is actually competing in the trials. Paralyzed in place, the young squire wonders what his next move should be. Since they both look utterly drained, he hopes things remain calm. Still, he wonders who that boy is allied with. Finally, the heralds whip the massive crowd into a frenzy for the silver tournament. Sebastian introduces himself as the lead announcer with Humphrey as his partner. They are live from the capital to stream the qualifiers and interview the various warbands. Lord Simon is called forward, but he is already armored and ready to fight. The steward announces 2 battles today, but only if they survive the first round. Sir Nathan is not worried at all about their chances of victory. They are here to win, but Simon warns Sir James to keep his cool during the herald's questioning. The focus shifts to the new recruit. Flashback. The crew celebrated, and Alexander knew he had given his all. Regardless of the outcome, Simon had to respect the boy's dedication. He heard that Alexander was the very last candidate they could possibly vet. Apparently, Simon finally gave in and allowed the boy to join the elite squad. Wait for it, you and I definitely didn't see this roster swap coming. The new member arrives, but he is clearly a different knight. The warrior summoned is actually Lord Jacob. After the selection, Lady Sarah asks about the final candidate, assuming the master wanted him. She recalls Simon praising the boy's skills many times in the past moon. The master dismisses it as simple courtesy. There were far more skilled and noble knights available, and Alexander was not even close to the legendary Reaper. Back in the present, Alexander's gauntlet slams against the stone wall near our protagonist. Julian thinks it was a terrible time to visit the washroom, as chills creep down his spine. The tension rises further as Alexander kicks the masonry right next to him. Suddenly, Julian is seized by the shoulder and struck across the face. He stands there in total shock, but Alexander shows absolutely no remorse for the blow. Instead, he wears a look of pure disgust, leaving the squire terrified of what happens next. This moment triggers a dark memory of the past, recalling when Alexander used to torment him with his cruel and heartless jests. Julian had been bound and humiliated before. He begs for mercy, desperate not to relive that horrifying nightmare again. Trembling and broken, he is exactly what the bully wanted to see. Alexander walks away, calling him a peasant and leaving him shamed. And that's where we stand. Trust me, you and I are about to see Alistair lead the Shadow Vanguard against the Iron Guard. Stick with me, Arthur looks like he's seen a total ghost. Before he can even breathe, the duel begins. Sebastian can tell Arthur is completely out of it. Based on his own scars, he knows an unfocused ally is a death sentence. He screams to warn Beatrice. Then, crack, lethal strikes rain down as the kill count spikes. This isn't how Arthur usually fights. He's in total survival mode. Seems the Reaper decided to handle his pain through cold, hard violence. In the arena, the enemies huddle up for safety. But one hears a shadow move, Arthur's already there. One pull of the trigger, and it's over before Sebastian can even blink. Total annihilation. Sebastian shouts for him to fall back, but the hero isn't listening, diving deeper into the fray. He's tearing through them like paper until one knight screams, accusing our hero of using dark magic. Wait for it, even for elite knights, this level of total slaughter shouldn't be possible. Despite being top-tier fighters, Arthur's focus is still shaky even though he's racking up bodies. He's charging in without a shield, pure madness. With one final shot, he slides through their base. Arthur was fighting like he didn't care if he lived, which was absolutely insane. Any real knight would have punished those mistakes. Still, the third round ends with him securing victory. The helmets come off, but Arthur is the first one up, bolting out of his seat. Sebastian tries to calm him down, but recoils when he sees the hero's hollow, exhausted expression. He's confused, but then he scans the crowd and spots the man likely behind Arthur's dark mood. Sebastian is fuming for missing Lord Victor's scheme, but with the next match looming, Arthur comes first. He knows he has to deal with Victor, but Arthur's head is in a different place. In his mind, his friends are angry he played sloppy. He refuses to lose another single bout. Now let's see how Sebastian handles this snake during the 1-hour lunch break. He greets Victor with a fake smile. When Victor ignores him, Sebastian drops a curse and repeats it. It's time to settle the score. Sebastian playfully mocks Victor's recent failures, clearly getting under his skin. Claiming he doesn't value Victor's life, he leaves one final warning to stay away from Arthur. Victor wants a duel to settle things, but Sebastian just mentions that karma is a natural law. He warns that justice might take time, but Victor shouldn't push his luck any further. With a mocking slap to the hand, Victor walks off. Sebastian's just wondering who they face next. Coincidentally, Victor heads straight toward a guy who has the answer, and he's total trash. Back with the knights, Leo gets a knee to the spine from Beatrice, crashing down like a toddler. As he gets up, she offers him some food. Still annoyed, Leo just turns her down. She offers them to Julian instead, who gladly accepts. They chat about the food, but Leo thinks it's weird that Julian is acting so stiff. Julian says the tournament vibe is intense, but asks for more snacks from Beatrice, calling her brother. Leo makes eye contact with her and quickly looks away. Surprisingly, Beatrice actually finds it adorable. The managers arrive at the arena where the tournament is happening, and it's absolutely packed. Local knights are everywhere. Sebastian greets them, making sure they found the arena without any trouble. Instead of answering, Lady Clara just shows off a support banner she made for the team. Leo has never met these girls before, and they've never seen him either. It's awkward since Clara and the boy look much smaller than their armored avatars. Anyway, Bonnie starts giving Beatrice a hand massage while asking how the earlier duel went. Clara and Sebastian are confident they'll win the next one too, since these are just qualifiers. But then Clara notices Arthur, and she's horrified by how rough and broken he looks. She asks if he's okay. Sebastian spills the truth about Victor, and Clara immediately bolts for revenge. When Julian asks who that was, Beatrice just calls her a complete lunatic. Back to Arthur. As things calm down, he takes a moment to reflect. Bonnie sits down to ask about the match. And trust me, you and I need to see what happens next. Trust me, we're about to see what happens when the hero checks the messages. He sees a sketch of the whole team that lightens the mood for a bit, but then Julia startles them both by screaming that she has handled Silas for good. Dorian hears her, but he's staring in horror at the actual clumps of hair clutched in her hand. Just as promised, Silas was cornered in the washroom and left completely bald. She tells the hero to celebrate and tries to hand him the hair, but Dorian is absolutely not touching that. It is finally time for the Black Rose to face the Beast Legion, so they gear up as the steward leads them to their seats. Suddenly, the blonde notices Silas is also fighting for the Crimson Crest against Team Hello World, which complicates everything. Even with all that drama, Dorian takes a deep breath and realizes his hands have finally stopped shaking. Lucky for them, Simon checks the enemy's knight ranks and realizes they are all below master level. Spellbound tells our hero to stay back, while the enemy team wonders who these Black Rose knights even are. One of them actually suggests they should try to be friendly and introduce themselves. Now pay attention, that friendly vibe is about to vanish. The group charges forward at a speed that leaves the entire team shook. A knight in jaguar armor locks onto Yummy, who is so paralyzed with fear he can't even move. With 5 enemies surrounding him, he has no choice but to scream for help, feeling the heat of the target on his back. Dorian tells him to stay calm, and handles 2 of them with just a few perfect shots. Simon corners a weak damage dealer and calls out for our protagonist to finish the job. Whose calm response makes Simon so happy he actually hugs his friend, praising his incredible progress. Dorian starts feeling better. Silas still scares him, but memories of Julia defending him and taking revenge are flooding back. You and I see it now. All of this was meant to break his trauma, and it finally worked. The Black Rose wraps up the match with a 2-0 victory. Moving to the next day. On the flip side, the Crimson Crest is also announced as having a perfect victory. Even with Silas lurking and the saltiness from rivals, Dorian is feeling more confident than ever. Serafina asks if her sister Beatrice is in the qualifiers, and they trade news about their team's massive successes. Anyway, Serafina already knew the Black Rose wouldn't go down without a serious fight. In the end, Eugene says it is time to leave, so Serafina suggests heading to a local tavern for barbecue. Beatrice doesn't get why Serafina is so invested, but she knows her sister is definitely plotting something big. Still, all that worry gets pushed aside, so they can just enjoy the moment for a bit. Julia gives props to Simon and Spellbound, which makes the guy's ego absolutely skyrocket. The knights trade compliments and friendly banter, and watching them get along makes the girl's heart race with joy as everything goes smoothly. Finally, Simon thanks the stewards for the new cloaks, but Beatrice thinks he might have crossed a line there. The blonde insists the new gear is a huge confidence booster, making them feel like they have already reached the quarterfinals. Feeling happier than ever, the stewards announce they are going to design a proper crest and a slogan. Beatrice is starting to feel like celebrating along with the rest. While everyone is training hard, she thinks they should really provide all the support needed to help them win. That night, Serafina storms through the door demanding drinks for everyone in the room. Beatrice tells her to chill, but Serafina is exhausted and jealous that her sister is out having fun while she's swamped with work. So feeling a bit bad, the girl fills just one cup for her older sister, who chugs it down instantly and feels way more refreshed. Serafina hugs her sister, crying over the stress of bringing the players together and handling all the noble commitments. She's curious about the next match, but the message for both teams was the same: return to the arena tomorrow. To make things even crazier, Simon calls, and the girl starts panicking immediately. Serafina picks up, staying calm but making it clear she can't stand the guy. She tells him Eugene and Arthur are crushing it. They had practiced every scenario with the royal guard, so they were totally ready for anything. Jake was holding his own despite the pressure of being new. Serafina thinks he loves the spotlight, but the girl's passive attitude is sketchy. So what do you and I think? Beatrice just wishes she would step it up and push harder like the rest. All right, you and I are starting with this girl, tossing her crystal aside and collapsing onto her bed for some rest. Lady Beatrice begged for a lesson in noble speech, desperate to learn how to deliver truly epic battle feedback to the knights. Seeing her opening, Lady Serafina asked to observe Beatrice's next practice duel instead. Beatrice tried to retreat, but Serafina insisted that studying their strategy was the fastest way to victory. She made it clear she wouldn't learn noble speak just to sit on the sidelines during the match. After hearing her out, Serafina assured Beatrice that she would master the art of command with enough practice. When Beatrice hesitated, Serafina reminded her she was a famous figure, putting her sister in a very awkward position. Suddenly, urgent news from the squires arrived, reporting that the Phantom Knight had officially entered the Grand Championship tournament brackets. Through the grapevine, one of them deduced that the legendary Reaper was actually Sir Dorian from the first year. In a quiet corner of the city, Lady Alara woke up in a daze, as the dawn was only beginning. She wandered the manor searching for Eugene, but bumped into Sir Julian instead, who was wearing a truly bizarre medicinal beauty mask. Alara asked why he was up so early, and the knight claimed it was his vital morning skin ritual. Since they were meeting commoners today, he believed looking flawless was essential, so she didn't bother questioning his logic anymore. He offered her his special ointments, but Alara preferred practicing her blade. Before she could leave, Julian made her pose for a magical portrait to share with the entire kingdom. He posted the scroll with the caption, "We woke early for the tournament." Alara started thinking the night was quite odd, but the portrait quickly gained over 2,000 viewers, and Julian was absolutely thrilled with all the royal compliments. However, one specific message caught his attention, mentioning the Phantom Knight instead of him. He remembered this warrior from the Mage Cup, and his presence in the tournament was definitely not good news. Now watch closely. Our hero woke up to his message crystals buzzing with warnings. With the team preparing, Sir Dorian felt the nerves crawling in. He headed to the Great Hall and told his mother how anxious he felt about the coming trials. His mother asked if it was the tournament causing his worry. Since it was the big day, his sister offered a tonic to help calm his racing heart. As he drank, he explained to his mother exactly what this grand competition meant to him. Dorian finished his tonic and realized he was hungry, so his sister offered to warm some soup while he went to bathe. At the arena, the crowds were whispering about the game and the legendary Mage Cup warriors appearing. Not seeing Xander, Dorian thought he was in another wing. Suddenly, a tap on his shoulder nearly made him faint from fright. Thankfully, it was just Sir Silas and strategist Beatrice, but they gripped his arm and stared at him intently. Silas asked if he was well, as the commoners were noticing him. The hero tried to act brave, but his true feelings were showing. First, They roughly adjusted a pair of spectacles and then forcefully changed his appearance with several other items. Word that the hero was likely on the blonde knight's team had already spread through the crowds. Already, several devoted fans were waiting for a chance to meet their champion. You and I both know how much shyness can ruin an epic moment, right? Even strategist Jury warned everyone they were mid-tournament. Silas knew the protagonist had to conquer his fear to fight well. However, the boy was incredibly sensitive and had just crossed paths with someone truly wicked. If the masses discovered his true identity now, they would surely lose the entire match in the chaos. To prevent disaster, they quickly fashioned a disguise for him while various trackers began their hunt for Sir Dorian. Failing to recognize him, the hunters assumed the rumors were false. As the news faded away, Dorian finally started to find his inner peace again. On the other hand, 𝒂𝒐𝒏𝒕 is not feeling the festive spirit. None of the tournament heralds were doing great after shouting for hours on end. But finally, they were heading out for a grand meal cooked by Yumpo's mother. To his delight, Silas received message scrolls from everyone saying they had crushed their opening matches. While nearly falling asleep in his lessons, Silas heard his companions calling his name. Two of them asked if he was competing, and when they mentioned his team, he woke up instantly. Without a hint of worry, Silas answered every question they had for him. He explained they had gathered different warriors from the cup, too. The community already knew they were destined for the quarterfinals next week. But that was just fearful talk for now. Silas promised that once they won, he would feast with them all. Everyone began to cheer for him in a relaxed manner, and they discussed the mysterious hero. They doubted the rumors since no one saw him at the local training grounds. They assumed he was merely there to cheer for Jury and Beatrice. Later that day, Sir Alistair was stunned by their team's strength, knowing the grand finals were only a week away. Alistair stressed over becoming a true knight, but the blondes had his back. Trust me, you and I will see them face a rival team tomorrow. All right, you and I are diving into a story where Dorian says this massive chance is not just about his burning ambition. The squad where Alistair is currently stationed needs to move to another territory for their mission. Eldon warns that someone is blowing up his scrolls with messages, but Silas says it is because of the sovereign cup they entered. Eldon completely misses the point, because he wants to believe he is a legendary royal heartthrob. Silas interrupts him to keep the morale high as they prepare to finally become elite professional champions for the kingdom. The rest of the squad lets out a massive war cry as Dorian locks eyes with Julienne, focusing on the present moment. In the arena, the main character aims his longbow at an enemy who is currently distracted and zoned out. Because of that, Dorian lands a clean shot that takes the foe out, making the Shadow Falcons rack up another victory. The team has already reached the top 64 and qualified for the afternoon tournament round. For some reason, Eldon keeps bragging about his moves to Beatrice, while Briar gives props to the legendary Dorian for his skill. He asks if she can send the enchanted scroll she drew of the squad, but Briar is confused and asks if it is her doodle. She hands over the scroll without a fuss, making Dorian very happy while Briar blushes from the attention. Julienne asks to see the art and claims it will bring the squad good luck during their next match. Dorian makes sure to thank her again, but Briar clearly has something else on her mind. Now pay attention here. This is when the Obsidian Order faces the Storm Wardens, and a dark shadow from Julienne's past suddenly returns. The peaceful vibe vanishes, and the stalker seems thrilled to see her again, unlike poor Julienne. Seraph quickly warns the group that their turn in the arena is coming up next. He asks who the stranger is, but hears nothing besides the pale silence of his trembling and scared friends. The guy claims he is a former comrade from matches, where Silas pushed Julienne to fight in the higher tiers against her will. He calls Julienne his little flower, but Dorian is clearly not feeling those disgusting and unwanted comments. Silas shouts, asking who the heck he is, but the creep says it only matters who Dorian is. Seraph suggests if the man is trying to stir up rumors, he should apologize and vanish before things get ugly. But the guy only cares about knowing if the blonde hero is Julienne's boyfriend. He was hoping to meet Dorian from their last duel, but loves the chance of Julienne being with both of them at once. I know what you are thinking. This guy is a total creep, right? Well, watch what happens to Dorian next. He asks if Dorian wrote that scandal in the rumor mill and wants to know what he plans to do. Silas remains completely stone-faced, which actually makes the stalker feel a bit shaken and nervous. Beatrice and Eldon jump in to assist, giving the weird boy a very serious and lethal stare down. Beatrice is getting super annoyed, but the stalker is jealous that Julienne has such flashy and powerful friends. Anyway, trying to keep his cool, he asks if this is the squad she is traveling with now. Beatrice steps in front of her as a magical flash goes off, making her even more ticked off. A random girl thought it was a good idea to snap a portrait, so Beatrice snatches the crystal away. She deletes the magical image and hands it back, still not accepting the girl's apology for the incident. The stalker is called to his match and leaves the team buzzing about who this weird and creepy dude is. At least Silas is keeping quiet, which makes Julienne feel a bit more uneasy. Dorian is curious about what he wants, but knows Julienne is good since she did nothing wrong in the past. Still, the main character knows it is tough for her, but they have her back. One Night thinks the commotion is a duel, but even if nothing happened, the rumor could ruin the reputation of the whole squad. Knowing this, Julienne decides to dip, leaving Dorian confused when they cannot find her anywhere nearby. Beatrice did not know the girl well, but she knew Julienne would not bail without a serious reason. The whole academy already knew about the drama, but now they had to worry about the team they were facing next. It was the Obsidian Order, the Stalker's own squad. As the two teams clash, one of the enemies is already sweating bullets. Julienne's squad is packed with legendary and grandmaster rank warriors. Their damage dealer is legendary level, but the stalker is not backing down despite the clear danger. So what do you and I take from this? Even with dirty tricks, the real battle for honor is just beginning. All right, stick with me. We're about to see a top-tier knight get completely humiliated. He planned to strike from the middle, but the young sorcerer blasted him first. His life force plummeted while he was still airborne. Sugo landed another heavy strike. With his vitality fading, things looked grim, but this knight wasn't about to surrender just yet. Then his final nightmare arrived. Lady Beatrice stepped forward, acting like she just wanted a casual little chat. The boy tries to flee with all his strength as a magic bolt strikes right at his feet. He realizes they're just toying with him and snaps. Trapped like a rat, he screams for his squires to assist, but they claim they're completely powerless to help. A heavy silence follows, leading the stalker to believe he actually managed to slip away into the shadows. That hope died the second he peeked out and got blasted by Beatrice, who mocked him the whole time. Since he's the lead knight, his allies are furious that he's failing to regroup. The stalker tells them to shut up because he's about to cast a powerful healing spell. He doesn't care if Beatrice is a legendary champion, since his own noble rank isn't doing too poorly lately. He shouts that she probably bought her title with gold, just like his friend's useless little squire did. Now watch this, because he actually manages to tick her off. She asks how good Julian's aim is, and he claims 92% accuracy. She asks for help, and he immediately agrees to take down 4 enemies. Finally, the stalker retreats toward his squad, but right at the castle gates, Beatrice is already waiting for him. When he turns, the girl lunges like a beast, grabbing his throat and slamming him against the stone wall until it cracks. He's annoyed she's fighting unarmed, but he accepts the challenge to settle this with a raw fistfight. She dodges his first move instantly. He clenches his fists even tighter, but for some reason, he can't land a single blow. The girl claims it's just a massive gap in talent and decides to show him how a real warrior punches. After taking another hit, the boy retreats to mend his wounds and regroup, trying to stick to the plan. Suddenly, a massive boulder crashes down right in front of him. This was Sugo's ultimate spell, usually forbidden in a simple duel. But all Sugo wants is to erase this worm from the map. The stalker is hit with a paralysis curse for 2.5 seconds. Completely frozen. But the moment he can move again, he has to leap back to defend himself. Still, he notices Sugo hovering above using an airborne technique, locking him down for 2 seconds. Then a binding spell keeps him stuck for 3 more. The crowd control is so brutal he's helpless. You and I can imagine him screaming at his team to finally do something. But honestly, for his teammates, he's actually being a great distraction while they sneak up on the crystal healer. But their support character suddenly drawing a sword ruined the whole strategy. After that clash with the Forest clan, Yummy felt completely traumatized about playing the role of a healer. Most knights ignore him for being support, but it's clear he really needed some serious backup there. The enemy leader says if they unite, they can still win. But Yummy wasn't alone because from the high towers, Julian had everyone in his sights. With a simple pull of the trigger, the roar of the rifle kicked off the final extermination. Julian would never forget the value of his bow. After all, Juliet had worked incredibly hard for that. Back at the manor, Juliet's mother asks why she's home, especially since she was so excited for the tournament. Then Juliet confessed everything. She said he just used her nickname, but since it happened in front of the whole court, she was worried about getting in trouble and wanted advice because she was certain Arthur would absolutely despise her now. Flashing back to when Juliet first met Arthur on their first day at the academy. While he chatted with his friends, she already thought he was incredibly charming. Besides being tall and noble, he seemed really kind to everyone. That name, Arthur, was enough to make her heart skip a beat. So, being a determined lady, she didn't waste time approaching the blonde knight to introduce herself and ask to be friends. Of course, Arthur didn't refuse and gave her a warm, dazzling smile. That day, Arthur looked especially handsome to her. That's how Juliet fell for him without even realizing it happened. Not long after, she summoned the boy, but he said he was busy. She thought he was just studying until she found the truth. While checking his journal, a friend asked if he was playing combat bonds, and he said he was. The arena was already open, so the blonde said he'd play once he got home. His friend suggested hitting the local tavern guild together. Even though he preferred training at home, Arthur agreed since it was the first day of the term. This made Juliet realize they were both really diving into this world. By late afternoon, Juliet went to see if Arthur wanted to hang out, but he headed for the tavern. You and I can see he just keeps leaving her hanging. All right, you and I are about to watch a noble girl fall for a guy obsessed with magical combat. The next day, the excuse was the same, so Lady Alara couldn't get too mad at Lord Alistair yet. By the following day, he was the one calling other knights to the arena, and the girl was starting to feel annoyed. Then he said no, and Alara cheered with happiness, but she heard it was only because he bought a private vision stone to game at home. From that day on, the name Eternal Crusade stuck in her head. With all her academy classmates buzzing about the simulation, she started to get truly furious with that dumb game. Anyway, she found herself in front of the grand arena with time to spare before her tutoring, so she decided to peek inside. Inside that place, it was wild that everyone played the same game. It was the Crusade, and Alistair was in there gaming. Alara had only played social simulators and history quizzes, so magical combat was new. But hey, at least picking her avatar was easy to figure out. Not really vibing with heavy weapons, she picked the high cleric class. When the girl jumped into the vision, her first challenge was moving with the runes. She was in the tutorial, so she struck the soul trigger like the game told her to, and then boom. She had unlocked the ultimate ability called Divine Reincarnation. Even though those were just simulated soldiers being saved by her magic, their gratitude made her eyes sparkle. This is where she realized, hey, this training could actually be a total blast. The next day, she sprinted over to Alistair, who totally ignored her as usual. But this time, he caught wind that she had played the game. Suddenly, the Golden Knight was all ears, and Alara said she finally got why he was so into it. Alistair, acting like a fanboy, asked what she played and if she was down to play again. When she answered, The young lord hyped up her setup as being on point. Alara was stoked because she picked her abilities randomly, but still got lucky by choosing the strongest meta in the kingdom. Alistair was hyped to explain how op the healing was with her quick spellcasting, and Alara was completely shook. Best part, he asked for her magic ID so they could squad up. They had that gaming session together, but Alistair was way better than she expected. She heard him giving tactical orders, but they sounded like a foreign language to her untrained ears. Still, she loved playing with him, especially when his calm, commanding voice came through the telepathy stone. That is what made her want to practice more. Now pay attention here. When the kingdom tournament started, Alistair didn't want a beginner slowing him down. He left, telling her to find her own rank. Thinking it was some kind of challenge, the girl felt her confidence surging. Without being a pro, she knew that the iron rank she snagged was pretty pitiful. Still, she was cool with practicing away from Alistair and kept enjoying the game. But in her matches, Alara kept getting stuck with incredibly impatient and aggressive night squads. She didn't want to use the telepathy stone, but playing without it was impossible. So, she yelled that she couldn't heal them if they charged too far. At that exact moment, the stalker heard her, realizing right away that it was a girl's voice on the line. At the end of the battle, the guy flattered her, saying her healing was master level. So, Alara tried to keep it humble. Anyway, he invited her for a duel. Since she couldn't play with Alistair anymore, she thought it was a solid offer and a way to improve her skills. Plus, the guy seemed chill with all the compliments he was throwing her way. When he found out she was a student, he asked for tomorrow's schedule. She dropped her magic scroll address for the stalker to find her later. "You and I know this is a bad idea,"